Okay, thank you. So pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, certain COVID-19 protection measures were extended as they relate to MGL 30A, Section 20, the open meeting law. This meeting of the City of Westfield Conservation Commission will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information can be found on the City of Westfield website at www.cityofwestfield.org. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to listen to the meeting may do so by tuning in to Channel 15 or Channel 12 or online at westfieldtv.org or online at youtube.com/Westfield Community Programming Channel. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we're unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the city's website an audio recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. Okay. Next item, roll call. Jim?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
All right. I guess that's it. So Alex is missing and Bob is missing. Okay.
Did you write them excuses, Meredith?
Yes, I gave them both a get out of jail free card.
Oh, you did, huh? Okay. All right,
Everyone,
thank
I mean, yeah.
you. Okay. Item 2, would anybody like to address the commission on any item not on the agenda? Seeing none, item 3, public hearings, NOIs. A is 459 Russell Road. The Country Club continued from January 12, 2021. Applicant requests continuance until the next meeting on July 27th, 2021. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue this, item until our next meeting on July 27th.
A second.
I'll second that. Yeah.
All in favor? Jim?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Okay, thank you. Item B, 81 Fowler Road. Again, continued from June 22nd, 2021. Meredith, any reports from the site visit?
Yeah, so we did a site visit on last Thursday with our Levesque, and Tom came and Bob was actually there too. And so we just noted, you know, the wetland delineation, it was pretty accurate. There was one flag change, and I was hoping Ryan would be here tonight to show us an updated plan. We reviewed that it's a buffer zone only project. Most of the work is going to be occurring in a hayfield. They're not mowing it right now, but I think it's typically mown for hay. They will be cutting. There's a small section of forested buffer from our 50-foot line out 100 feet that will be cleared of rather mature trees. And so there were a few things we asked at the last meeting to be shown on the plans, like marking the 50-foot no disturb zone and maybe some plantings to be added. I don't know if anyone is here from Levesque.
Hello, my name is Christopher Carney. I work over at R. Levesque Associates as a civil engineer and land surveyor, and I had a long talk with Ryan Nelson prior to attending tonight's meeting. He's briefed me on and got me up to date on this project. So I'm here tonight to present on behalf of Pastor Wally for the proposed single-family residence at 81 Fowler Road on the northwest side of it. And I believe some of the revisions requested by Meredith just now have been shown on this site plan dated July 9th recently. So I think we can just jump right in, and I'll try to share screen here. So here we can look at. Is everyone seeing this plan?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Just trying to make it larger size for everybody, but I think I can just zoom in and work well with it. So the proposed project is a single family residence here, and associated with that is a driveway and septic system. It would be a raised septic system with a pump going, or gravity flow to a septic tank, and then gravity flow to a pump system, and then a raised bed leach field. As you can see, the septic system, the majority of it, including the leach field, are outside of the 100-foot buffer shown here, and the leach field would be located between the 50 and 100-foot buffer. Single family house has been carefully placed, so that is outside of the 50-foot buffer, and also within required step back lines shown here in the dash. So as you can see, once we have these zoning setback lines and this 50-foot, I'll call it a no-touch line for Westfield, that we really have a very small building envelope. Because of that small building envelope and because of our choice to keep outside of the 50-foot buffer, the home size has been limited to 30 feet by 40 feet. It's a very modest size home, single family home. This would be a house for Pastor Wally's daughter. I believe Pastor Wally's house is up here to the north, and this would be an additional house here. After this project, if it is permitted by the city of Westfield, there would be an A&R that would take place to divide this property from the parent parcel. So as you can see, we've shown some monuments to be placed along this 50-foot buffer. So these are proposed conservation monuments along the 50-foot buffer. We're proposing them along the 50-foot buffer, but then following the existing edge of woods. I think that makes a lot of sense for a number of reasons.
Recording in progress.
Keeping the monuments on the existing tree line will allow them to continue to mow this, and I think will give the monuments a better chance of remaining intact over a longer span of time. Also, all the work in the front of the area and work within the 50-foot buffer, there's no tree clearing proposed within the 50-foot buffer. It's just maintaining the existing tree line. As Meredith had noted, there is some tree clearing. That tree clearing would take place right here. This would be the existing tree line here, and then a proposed tree line up here. And you'll notice that all tree clearing is proposed outside of the 50-foot buffer, as well as some plantings, 6 plants planted along this edge. Really, the purpose of this clearing is to allow for the septic tank to be placed here and the pump chamber to be placed here. Because there's a well in the front of the house, we have to maintain buffers to the septic tank. So while it looks like you could place the pumps in the front, that would just flip the well to the back of the property and we'd have the same scenario. So I feel this is a pretty good design for the applicant's requests. So I think that since there has been a site visit, and I believe this is the second meeting for this, I'm not going to get too deep into the topography of the site, but it does generally slope from the south towards the wetland here. And if you have any questions, I think I can answer anything that you can have.
Any questions from the commission?
No, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Chris, or Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sure.
Chris, I don't think we've met, so welcome. Nice to meet you. Can you tell me, you thought it made a lot of logical sense to encroach the 50-foot buffer down in that lower right-hand corner. Run that by me again. How does this make sense to you?
Well, so here we're seeing the edge of the hayfield and the edge of the clearing. And you're going to notice this line doesn't remain changed. It's the same line in pre-development and post-development conditions. I think after the site visit, there are some requests to monument the 50-foot buffer line. I think what I'm speaking to that makes a lot of sense is instead of monumenting a line inside a cleared area, inside of a grassed area of the site, to instead monument it at the existing edge of trees here.
Yeah, you called it a no-touch zone. and yet it's going to be touched quite a lot. And if I'm looking at it, and I was at the site, I did go visit the site. I'm guessing you're within 20 feet of the resource area. You know, now you've squeezed from 50. Now you're within 20 or maybe 25 feet. Yeah, right there. And I just have trouble with that. I'm also under the impression that this area you're planning, or the owners plan to grass over, to make into like lawn. Is that your impression?
I think, yeah, I think it's right now maintained as a hayfield. So it's in a grass or cleared state anyway, with no natural vegetation other than the grasses that have come in to the site.
Chris, why
So
can't you push all this to the left? Just
I don't think
scoot it
so.
over to the
Yeah.
left.
I wish we could. I think that's a great idea and a great point. It's this zoning line that comes down to a triangle, and this is the building setback line. That forces us to keep the building where it is.
So this property already there's already a home on the property, is that right?
No, there's no home on the property right now. It's maintained as a hayfield, an open field.
There's when you look up the lot, is there a home on the lot? Has this been something about it needs to be subdivided? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. It's not shown on this plan, but there is a single family residence for Pastor Wally located northerly of this. So this would be the second home proposed on the lot. But if permitting goes through, we would file an approval not required division of land plan, and that would divide this home from the Pastor Wally home and make two parcels, each with one house on them.
Yeah, I'm assuming the orientation of this site plan is to the north. The home that exists on the lot is also north. Is that correct?
I believe that home is over in this direction.
I'm sorry, Chris, that got mumbled. Can you say that again?
I believe the existing home for Pastor Wally is to the east or northeast of this residence, generally where I have my.
Okay. All right. Well, I just don't like the encroachment of 50 feet, especially since this is a new development. It's not something that is grandfathered, or I'm recommending that you go back to the drawing board and try to figure out how to do it without coming 25 feet away from the resource area. And actually taking a great deal of that 50-foot buffer. That, I'm sure Chris, that 50 feet has been shown to be critical to protecting what we're supposed to protect. And we've been pretty loyal about protecting that 50 feet. So I have a problem with your site plan.
Okay. Tom,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Tom, I understand those concerns, and over at our Levesque Associates, we're not trying to cut down trees. And I fully understand the use of a 50-foot buffer. I know the Westfield bylaws aren't really written with a specific 50-foot no touch. It allows you some leeway in many situations, but we always try to have our plans respect a 50-foot buffer. For this site, though, I'm just going to restate that we aren't proposing any alterations within the 50-foot buffer. We're maintaining existing use. Outside of the 50, in between the 50 and 75 foot, we would be proposing a house and limited clearing in the back for a septic system. This is for a modest single family home on an existing road in Westfield. So,
Mr.
All right,
Chairman,
I'm sorry, Jim. Let me just to be clear, Chris. I'm again assuming that the landowner, the homeowner, is going to grass this area. You just said there'd be no change. So this part of the 50 feet that I'm concerned about, that bottom right-hand corner of the site plan, that will remain natural vegetation. That will remain the way it is now, like open field.
I can't comment on a cutting schedule for the grass on this. I'd assume as a residential house, they would cut the grass more often than a typical hayfield. So that would be the change proposed. I suppose more aggressive grass cutting, but that's a speculation on my part, and I can't really attest to cutting schedules in that area. I guess what I can attest to is our proposed plan doesn't show an increase of disturbance within the 50-foot buffer. It simply maintains the existing tree line.
Jim?
Well, I echo Tom's concerns, but I'm also confused with Chris's response. Is the 50-foot area going to be altered, or is it in its natural condition? I think that's the question I have, and I don't understand the answer.
Okay. I guess I'll slow down and I'll try to explain myself a little bit better. The existing tree line is shown here in this light gray. This is where we're proposing monuments along this line. So this would be the edge of a natural forest, dividing grassed fields here and a natural woodland here. As you see, there's no proposed work. The well is situated outside of the 50-foot buffer. The work would be placing monuments at the tree line. And then the existing tree line would not be altered at all within the 50-foot buffer. This being the 50-foot buffer line, I assume this area would be maintained in a very similar fashion as it is in existing conditions.
So, all right, so to Tom's concern, will the landowner alter anything, or will the 50-foot 50-foot area be maintained in a natural condition so they can protect the resource area?
My answer to that would be, it would be maintained in the same fashion as in existing conditions.
And so, Tom, are there trees there? What's there now?
No, it's just a hayfield. But
Just a
I agree. I agree with Chris. You know, the homeowner is going to want to grass it over. I think I'm either going to vote against this or recommend that he go back to the owner and make it very clear that if, or at least from my point of view, that if this project is to be approved, that he stay out of the 50-foot zone.
I would agree with you and make a no work zone. You know, that's what it is. It's static and leave it as it is beyond the bounds.
Which would be consistent with Westfield's history.
That's my opinion.
And if you note that up at the top right-hand corner of the new building is on the 50-foot line. So he's just, you know, Chris, God bless you. You've pushed the envelope as far as you can, but I just don't like it.
If I could add a question, Mr.
Sure, go ahead.
For the monuments that you're suggesting, those rocks that are going to delineate just the forest edge, or because I'm not clear on what they would indicate.
That would be a line of no disturbance. So conservation monument to state that no activities will be, no activity beyond these monuments. We would follow Westfield's lead for the type of monument placed these places.
Okay. Yeah, and that confuses me as well, in that those are usually placed at the 50-foot line and not inside.
Yeah. I think because of the applicant's hopes that the existing tree line can be maintained in its same state, that they didn't want monuments placed along a 50-foot buffer that would go through the hayfield. So at that point, we are placing monuments at the tree line, and those would be the areas that would state, and not encroach on the city's wetland resource area.
It would seem to me for ultimate protection, we'd want those monuments clearly indicating that it's a no work, no alteration zone, meaning on the 50-foot line.
And I don't think it's fair to ask Chris to even answer that question since he's subbing for Ryan. But I do think we probably could resolve this and send it back and have this site plan come back to us when we meet on the 27th, clearly showing that the monuments will be on the 50-foot line and that will be, as you started out by saying, Chris, that'll be a no-touch zone, the 50-foot line, not the existing field, not where he's grown hay or corn or whatever he's grown. I think that's how we should resolve this tonight. What do you think, Mr. Chairman?
Well, currently that small area is being mowed as hay. Is that correct? Chris?
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't think we can tell them they can't do that because it's already happening now.
No, that I'm perfectly happy if they want to continue to mow and hay that little area, but let it return to, let it not be a lawn.
Yeah, I consider that a pretty good alteration because hayfield can be, habitat for nesting birds. It can be habitat for small mammals, and a lawn is not. There are other areas for lawn around this house, above it and below it. And you're right, our sort of rule of thumb is that, nothing occurs inside the 50, especially with new projects. Sometimes it's hard with older projects, but I think with a new project, we can be firmer on where we want to put these monuments.
I'm ready to give you a motion if you're ready for one.
If I could just try to summarize your comments, because we're not here to argue with you, and if it's the conservation requirement that no work will take place within the 50-foot buffer, I think I'd just like to clarify that position and pass that along to our applicant and let them make the choice for the next meeting, if that's
Well, I think that, the consensus, as I'm reading it, is that the commission would like to have those markers on the 50-foot line and not 25 feet inside the 50-foot line.
Okay.
Is that correct, Commission?
Yes, that's my opinion as one member.
Tom?
Yes, that's what I've been arguing for.
Okay, Carl?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. I'm
and then
not taking a vote, Bob, but I think, the applicant or the, consultant gets the idea that, that's what the commission would like to keep the 50 as the place where the markers are.
And a clear understanding that that will be a no-touch zone.
Yeah.
In the future.
So that's, I think, the next point I just want to relay accurately to the applicant would be when you say no touch, that would be maintained as a hayfield, or would you like that restored with the restoration seed mix or various plantings to really make this 50-foot buffer restored to a natural state?
I'm not even sure that it needs to be actively seeded or planted, but that definitely it ought to be an area that is no longer mowed.
Well,
In other words, so it can just revert to its natural state.
May I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to note that during the site visit, we looked at this area and granted we had a lot of rain, but there was standing water, and I looked at the soil and it was marginal. It could have gone wet, it could have gone upland. That's why there's a little point at A10 here. The wetland comes up and there was kind of a drainage area, kind of the whole field drains to this area. So I think it is important to not have any work happen in this area, because even if it's not a wetland, that's where the entire or part of the site is draining. And if this gets disturbed, all tilled up during construction, we could have a sedimentation issue. granted, there's going to be silt fence there, but just a side note, I think it would be a good idea to maintain this small hayfield part of the buffer zone leave that out of construction. And then we're keeping with our practice of a no-touch zone.
Yeah. So plans to be revised with silt fence at the 50-foot buffer.
I think that's the consensus I'm hearing here.
Yeah, that sounds appropriate to me as well.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we continue this until our next meeting on the 27th.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second that.
All right. Any further discussion at this time? Seeing none. Tom?
I'll vote yes.
Okay, Jim,
Yes,
Carl,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you. I'll see you later tonight.
Okay. All righty, item C is 898 Southampton Road. Mobile home park improvements. So in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, a public hearing will be held on July 13, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. by virtual meeting regarding a notice of intent submitted by Heritage Residents Association for improvements to the mobile home park located at 898 Southampton Road. Okay, do we have a proponent for this project?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everybody. My name is Brent White from White Engineering in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, on behalf of the applicant. I'd like to thank you all for your time this evening.
Okay, welcome, Brent.
Thank you. The nature of this project here is part of a much larger happening at the park. Approximately a year and a half ago, the residents actually acquired ownership of the park, and as a part of their acquisition, they've retained our firm, along with working with a team of consultants, to develop a master plan to help improve a number of the elements of the infrastructure in the property. One of the areas that's of greatest concern is their water distribution system, the age and condition of the water system. There's a fair amount of leakage and issues within the system, and then obviously the roadway itself is certainly in need of great repair. And the thought process is we come in, first off, install the improved water lines. Then we are able to come in and repave the roads. And in this case here, also provide a fair amount of stormwater management improvements from the existing site. Again, this is historically is a mobile home park. It's been developed for quite some time, certainly well before the adoption of the Wetlands Protection Act. And it should be noted that the drainage improvements that we have been proposed in a way trying to preserve as much of the existing park itself for the residents, for the roads throughout the park, as well as for their individual parking spaces, and not taking away from those areas. And with your permission, I'd like to share my screen just to give an overall presentation of the site itself, and then I'm happy to walk through the review comments that we received from Mark Stinson.
Sure, go ahead.
And just out of curiosity, do you all hear an echo of my voice, or is that just me?
I don't.
I
Okay.
do. And can we please,
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
getting it.
can everyone please mute themselves? Sorry to interrupt, Brent.
No, thank you. I think that'll probably help solve the problem.
Couple iPhones that are not muted. Can everyone just make sure if you're not speaking, you can mute, please? Thank you.
and also, Mr. Chairman, to Brent, I am getting an echo from you.
Okay, I hopefully with other people muting, then hopefully my voice coming over on their screen won't be a feedback loop that's causing that. Okay, so
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, is that visible for you all?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Again, just to orient you to the site here, off to the right is Southampton Road. And then we have a number of driveways that lead throughout the park itself, if you were to follow my cursor. And then obviously the primary reason we're before you this evening here is Armbrook essentially bisects the park itself in a north to south direction here. And obviously we have with our 200-foot riverfront area, the limits of your jurisdiction here may be difficult to see. I'll try and do this in red. So here's the limits of the outer riparian zone towards Southampton Road. And here are the limits of the outer riparian zone to the west. One of the things that you'll also note throughout this sheet here are these dark shaded areas. Those are areas that we've proposed rain gardens and buffer plantings to help mitigate not only where stormwater accumulates throughout the road network here, but also in an effort to try and improve some buffer plantings within the inner riparian zone of Arm Brook. Again, the goal is to come in and to completely reconstruct the water distribution system throughout the park. One of the goals will also be that as a part of this process, it will allow for a greater isolation of the water system throughout different parks. We've had the opportunity to work for a number of mobile home parks, and as a part of going through a process like this, what we found is with the ability to have a number of different shutoffs. First off, these will be state-of-the-art materials going in. We certainly expect to have very little, if any, maintenance issues for quite some time once this product is completed. But one of the goals will be, should there be a period where an individual resident has an issue with their water service, they'll be able to find isolation valves just upstream and downstream of that unit and really minimize the number of residents who may be impacted by needing to shut off water service to complete whatever repair may be necessary. As a part of the repaving of the roads here, we do have some areas that are existing gravel that we intend to pave and existing gravel areas that we intend to restore to lawn. If I can pan here. So as I stated, we filed our notice of intent. We have received our DEP file number from Mark Stinson. He did have a number of comments, and I'd like to share my screen with the cover letter that I submitted to the agent earlier today that has the comments that were provided by DEP as well as our response to those. And I'll just start off this discussion by saying that I think, frankly, the site visit will allow us to look at some of these comments in greater detail and understand what is going to be the most appropriate response to that. I did have some follow-up with Mr. Stinson since we submitted this. I just tried to make it clear to him that my submittal this evening is not the resolution of these items, and that our hope would be a chance to hear your comments this evening and walk the site will allow us to positively address all of these comments. And I will not read them verbatim, but the first comment was with respect to Arm Brook being designated as a cold water fishery.
Brent, excuse me.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, can you please go back to the map and enlarge it? So show us on your plan exactly where the project is going to occur.
The project is going to occur on the entire sheet of paper. Throughout the entire road network will be the replacement of the water lines and the repaving of the roads. What I've tried to highlight here in red is the limits of the riverfront area to the east and west.
Okay.
So your jurisdiction is essentially what I've enclosed in red here for your reference. So there certainly is a fair amount of work that will occur outside of the riverfront area. However, we do plan to procure this and do all work at the same time.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, sir. So again, the first comment was just with respect to the fact that Arm Brook is a cold water fishery. The stormwater checklist that we submitted along with the notice of intent, I believe it's item 6, has us identify if there is a critical area within the product area. I had not checked that box. However, we will submit a stormwater checklist that does correctly identify the fact that Arm Brook as a cold water fishery does meet that characteristic. That's a more of an administrative matter, but one we're easily able to address. The second comment was, I believe, questioning there's a number of exempt activities under the Wetlands Protection Act for work within buffer zone and riverfront area. Clearly, in our opinion, the work associated with the water line repairs within an existing driveway, whether it's public or private, the utility work is clearly an exempt activity. I believe what Mr. Stinson was questioning was, does the exemption, even though this is a private, it's a public way in the fact that all the residents have the right to pass over that. This is not a municipal public right of way where you would have say a 20 to 30 foot wide road along with a shoulder that is owned by the municipality. So from our perspective, we want to ensure that through this process, what we've identified is already clearly meeting the exempt activities, as well as the work that the commission would authorize with an order of conditions, that we have permission to replace every water main and service throughout the riverfront area. We have the ability to repave all of the existing roads within the riverfront area. and ideally come to a consensus on what is the best way to help improve the stormwater management on site within the riverfront area. The third item was actually with respect to a question of potential clearing activities, or I believe it was even questioning if a mobile home had been placed without a permit. And I'm going to stop my share for a second so that I may share a couple of photos that DEP had provided to us that are relevant to the situation. So I will stop briefly. Okay. So this photo was taken, was provided to DEP, dated 2017. The center of the screen, if you follow my cursor, they've identified a mobile home. And if you follow my cursor, there's a unit that's essentially underneath the canopy of this deciduous tree that I'm circling right now. The question was raised after review of a 2019 image that shows that same area. Again, this is the same identification of the mobile home. It's the same unit that's here. It's quite an old unit from our recollection here, but the thing that stood out to me was that this photo was clearly taken in the fall as compared to the previous photo that you saw, which was in the middle of peak foliage, as evidenced by a number of deciduous trees, surrounding the subject work area. My thoughts were that we would have an opportunity during our site visit to inspect this area more closely to see is there a violation that's even occurred. I certainly appreciate the department's willingness to review aerial photography and identify if a violation has occurred or not. One of the, I think, follow-up questions that Mark had for me, frankly, was, what is your response to the violation? And at this point, I'm not confident in saying there is or was not a violation. I am confident that we would have the ability to, through our proposed replanting and a chance to visit the site, if there was unpermitted activities or clearing within the inner riparian zone, the scope of work that we're undertaking would certainly allow us to come up with a planting plan to address that. But frankly, until we can look at that more closely on site, I would hesitate to confirm or deny that there was a violation.
And Brent, why is that? Why can't you answer that yes or no?
Because when we did our work this past fall, sir, I was not aware of there's nothing that stood out to me as there was a recent clear cut, what have you here. We started our work in the fall of 2020. So in terms of going back to the conditions of 2017 or 2019, I don't have firsthand knowledge of that. What's going to help me, if I may go back to the original photo that I shared, was, if I can get there. I think, frankly, if we can verify the health and condition of this deciduous tree right here, again, this photo doesn't tell us what's happening underneath this canopy. If we see that tree in full view and no major clearing, then I would suggest that we saw a photo 2 years later that was taken in the autumn that happened to show more of the unit than an aerial photo in the middle of the summertime that has full leaves of foliage that are covering the unit that was shown again in that later photo.
Yeah, are those trees still there, Chris? I'm sorry, Brent, are those trees still there?
I'm trying to. We did identify some trees. We didn't identify every specific tree in that area. That's why I was hoping to, at the site visit, it's clear from the aerial photo which tree I need to be looking for. And again, that was really going to be outside of our work area in terms of staying within the roadway and doing the water service lines. But we're happy to give it due attention at the site visit. And if we feel that there's clearly unpermitted clearing or cutting, we would plan to address that with our revised plans.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome. And like I said, it's I just don't want to speak out of turn one way or the other. If there's clearing that was done or mowing right up to it where it shouldn't have, I think we can work with the Residents Association to address that. So I will. Sorry for all the back and forth. I don't know how between my Microsoft Edge and then the photos to show everything in one item here. So we'll go back to the. So with respect to the discussion of rain gardens here, you saw those dark shaded areas. From our perspective, from mine as a designer, we are dealing with relatively small subcatchments, areas where the roadway would drain to the various low spots. And through our work and not only last fall, but working with the associations and their respective trustees, they've more recently been able to identify for us really problematic localized drainage concerns where people have ponding water up to their unit, which is not only a nuisance in the summertime, but really becomes more of a slip and fall hazard in the winter time. So as a part of mobilizing with heavy equipment here, we have the ability to not only pitch the roads to drain the way that we need to. Our goal is to also provide some depressed areas where that water can physically drain and get off of the roadway itself. Again, we propose rain gardens for the fact that in terms of an overall sediment load, in my opinion, I thought a better solution was to show a rain garden which has more natural vegetation covering the wetted footprint of the bottom of that, as compared to, say, a riprap sediment forebay, which would be exactly what it sounds like. Hole in the ground with riprap, with maybe a few shrubs surrounding the perimeter. So in my view, the rain garden allowed us to provide more natural vegetation as a part of our overall stormwater management scheme. If I were to have to put in, unfortunately, based on the elevations, trying to route everything to deep sump catch basins and then to a forebay, unfortunately, I don't feel I have enough surface elevation change to really make that work without putting that water, frankly, even closer to Arm Brook. But one of the thoughts that I had was that, again, if the commission, ultimately you have discretion in this, and from my perspective, my goal is to make the conditions of the roadway satisfactory so that the residents are able to pass along the road safely year round and provide a mechanism where that water has somewhere to drain. And if it's a matter of more of a standalone forebay itself with some shrubs planted around the perimeter, that would be just as easy to maintain as a rain garden with mulch itself. But that was the thought process that we had here. And I think, frankly, this discussion and a chance to walk the site will at least be able to better understand what our existing conditions are. And in my view, showing what an improvement this would be, even if we were to convert what are shown as rain gardens to forebays and do some additional shrub planting along the Arm Brook, which I think was a suggestion that Mark Stinson had. One of the fifth comment was kind of dovetails on that with respect to analyzing soil conditions here. One of the things that was unique about this project was how little information that was available on the underground utilities out here. As a part of our work, we consulted with a contractor who marked every utility that DigSafe would identify for us. However, with all of the existing water lines being plastic, there was very, very little documentation as to where the actual water mains and service lines went throughout the park itself. So we actually subcontracted with a ground penetrating radar company who scanned a lot of the critical areas where we would have our utilities going in. And one of the benefits of that was to not only identify where the actual water services are in the road, but as a part of the measurements that they take, they're able to, what they look for are changes in geophysical conditions below grade, going from a topsoil to a sand and gravel layer to hard pan to ledge. Based on the different frequencies of the measurement, they can identify what the different characteristics are. And I was pleased to see that they did not encounter any sort of ledge really throughout the area where that they scanned. We did consult with the soil survey, and that did identify the entire property as a Windsor loamy sand, which is a very well draining soil, really, really suitable for use of a rain garden. That was part of the reason we felt confident that we had not only appropriate soil conditions, but also a proper depth of groundwater where the rain garden itself would not be a potential source of contamination for the site. And we've included some of the references of the soil description just to have it as a part of your record here.
Brent, a question about number 5.
Yes, sir.
Regarding Mark's comment about pre-treatment and the soil analysis for the stormwater.
Yes, so that goes to the discussion of, in my opinion, based on the relatively small area, this isn't a matter of we're taking the entire park and draining the entire road drainage network to a single rain garden with no pre-treatment here. We have very, very small, a few hundred, couple thousand square feet of area at most that are draining to these low spots. So in my opinion, how I felt it better to maximize the spaces where we were putting the rain gardens and maximize the size of the rain garden, if it might mean more frequent replacement of the mulch to allow the rain garden. If I were to say we are going to eliminate the rain garden as our proposed stormwater best management practice, and we will convert that to a sediment forebay, that will provide an area where water can achieve my goal of getting the water off of the road surface. It will allow it to accumulate in an area out of driving and walking. It will promote infiltration into the ground, and then we can provide buffer plantings around the perimeter. So that's where I say there are options. We have plenty of options to address this comment here. And my hope would be for the commission to have a better understanding of what the existing conditions are on site. And again, in my view, I think the rain garden with more natural vegetation is a better outcome. But I understand that the thought process of having pretreatment for a rain garden. The issue I would have is, frankly, as I lose rain garden capacity in order to install a separate sediment forebay between the edge of the roadway and the rain garden itself. And that's something I'm happy to look at again, even before our site visit, to give you an idea of what those areas would look like. I'm going to continue that discussion.
Yeah, before we come out to the site, could you stake those rain gardens out so we know the dimensions and where they're going to be?
That would not be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
And really, the last comment really kind of puts a bow on the discussion with regards to just the overall, the property, the riverfront area, and Armbrook being a cold water fishery. To be honest, maybe as I think about this comment more and preparing my response and even preparing for this evening, maybe it turns out that the best solution for this site is for the areas that I've identified as rain gardens. Maybe we really try and focus those more as forebays and just allow the sediment to be accumulated in that area. We know that the water will still infiltrate and have an area to get off of the roadways significantly more than we have currently, and focus more buffer plantings per se right along the edge of Armbrook itself. That I think, I won't speak for Mark, but I think that was what he was getting at with comment number 6, was essentially if we had more shrubs or vegetation along Armbrook, that would provide a greater benefit to the cold water fishery aspect of the river as compared to having shrubs in a rain garden, some of which may be outside of the inner riparian zone. And we even do have some that are proposed outside of the riverfront area. That was one of the follow-up questions that Mark had asked me to address, was the fact that in this case, I understand the commission under the Wetlands Protection Act, your order of conditions gives you the authority to enforce any and all activities that occur within 200 feet, and that would not have that authority outside the 200 feet. It was merely our intention to show the commission and obviously our contractors that we have work that we need to do outside of the riverfront area to address drainage concerns on the property itself.
all right, thank you. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
to the applicant, please. So I have a question. Let's say it was a forebay or say with a rain garden or a combination. Did you do any soil testing that would provide information as to the perk rate and how it would handle the water?
We did not do physical excavation on each location for the fact that we relied on the soil survey that has mapped the entire area as that loamy sand, as I described. And again, for typically for a product of this size and scale, having consistent soils information. If you read through the description, you see the site, you see how it's mapped here. I feel very confident that we have the well-draining soils to accommodate this. Have the soil survey or identified more of a sandy loam or a silt loam, I likely would have come up with a different best management practice train to address this here. In my view, this was the best combination of giving enough area for the water to drain, taking for granted the fact that the water will be able to absorb, and I don't need to actually clear more riverfront area to create a larger detention pond or a larger rain garden. So it was based on the fact that we did not encounter any evidence of ledge during our ground penetrating radar, as well as the soils being mapped consistently throughout the property as that loamy sand.
Thank you. By the way, as a piece of information, we have a recent project not too far up the road, and they did run into ledge. So just a piece of information for you.
No, thank you. And again, one of the concerns that I had, frankly, was right now in the design and exploration phase here, the biggest concern I have with something like this is don't do any more damage than you already have. And the idea of hitting a water main where we're not mobilized for construction, thankfully, and that's one of the suggestions I'm going to have for the contractors is in a lot of these critical areas where we have our, drilling for the water main on either side of the bridge, that we will get out and do more test days before they physically install the water line, but they will be mobilized with all the proper equipment to be able to seal off a water main or if they hit something else, that they're in a better position to address that versus during pre-construction where we're simply doing exploration work. And I made the judgment call to say, based on the soil survey, based on the ground penetrating radar and the consistency of the soil survey, I feel confident that we have the soil conditions to support this.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have one
Who started?
question, Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
One question to Brent. So are the rain gardens the only stormwater treatment improvement for paving the roadways? Is there any stormwater treatment currently out there?
It's as I said, anything we do will be an improvement. But I certainly understand the distinguishing between stormwater management standards to the maximum extent practicable, and the fact that it's a cold water fishery and trying to protect the overall. They're all related, but they all have their own individual piece here. Obviously, under the stormwater management, we are falling under to the maximum extent practical for the fact that it's an existing developed facility with a number of constraints, not only the river, but existing units, existing infrastructure, and trying to ensure that our solving of one problem does not create another one, either for ourselves or a downstream abutter. And again, the thought process here is if at the end of this project, converting the areas that we've identified as rain gardens to more of a forebay that allows the water to simply accumulate, be infiltrated, and focus more planting closer to the high water line of Arm Brook. That, in our view, I think that's a reasonable compromise and a benefit of going through the comment review process.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't know if there were sumps in the
No,
catch basins.
unfortunately, there's very little drainage infrastructure at all out there, and we're also challenged with the fact that it's such a relatively flat site that I really don't even have the elevation to come in and establish a catch basin pipe to sediment forebay detention pond. We're really dealing with just surface grading as our way of address. The nice thing about that is we know we're dealing with, again, small catchment areas, relatively shallow pitch, existing paved areas. So our drainage characteristics, again, at the end of this, I think will be a net increase, but we're not dealing with a situation where the entire park is draining to a single location. So by doing the surface grading and providing these kind of decentralized throughout the park, that's something, if we were designing this from scratch, that's certainly something we would be looking to do. But in this case here, I don't have a pipe catch basin network that I could even tie into or consider a proprietary unit, for the fact that I just don't have anywhere to drain it that wouldn't otherwise create a point source discharge, which is an even bigger no-no.
Right. So right now the water just hits the roads and the trailers and just runs off untreated.
Some of a fair amount of the stormwater management is it pools right in front of people's homes and in their parking spots. So that's a Wetlands Protection Act stormwater improvements matter, and it's a quality of life that we're really hoping to accomplish with this.
Yeah, and I think visiting the site and looking at where you're proposing all the rain gardens will help us really understand.
I have to laugh. I think we've had more rain in the 3 weeks since we filed a notice of intent than the entire 10 months that we were working on the project before. But
so we'll see the flooding.
It is what it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Out of curiosity, I didn't know if the commission, do you have a standing date or time for when you do site visits, or is that something that we would be able to coordinate our schedules on?
You coordinate that with Meredith.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Any questions or comments from the audience concerning this particular project? All right, seeing none, entertain a motion to continue.
I'll make a motion that we continue this until our July 27th meeting.
Can we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none. Tom,
Continue. Yes.
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
and Carl,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes as well. Thank you. And,
Thank you all very much. I look forward to working with you on this. Have a
Right.
great night.
Thank you, Brent.
You're welcome.
Okay, item 4, public meetings, 317 Union Street. Continued from June. Meredith?
Yep, so this is the project on Union Street where there's a request to clear a bunch of different areas in the bordering land subject to flooding. Did another site visit, and I believe everyone has been out there so far that wanted to. And Mr. Whitman is here tonight. He hired GZA to do a wildlife habitat assessment, I believe. I'm not quite sure if it's just habitat assessment or you're saying you don't have to do one, but I did receive a report this afternoon that I briefly looked at, and it was sort of a citation of the regs and what they have to do. So if you guys want to present that would be great. Just refresh the commission on the project. And I did receive an updated map from Mr. Whitman, if he wants to share that. This project has been a work in progress. It seems to be evolving since we first met out there. And if you guys want to go ahead and speak to the project again, that'd be great.
Is that Mr. Ribberty from GZA?
Yes, it is.
Do you want to talk about your report?
Yes, no, sure. I'm just for the record, I'm Steve Ribberty, senior ecologist at GZA, wildlife biologist, certified wildlife biologist, professional wetland scientist. I was retained by Mr. Whitman for the habitat assessment portion of this. That's all my involvement has been to date. Just going out there, conducting a habitat assessment of the lower floodplain habitat areas up by Union Street. We looked at his RDA filing to get a sense of what he's proposing for work out there, compared it to the regulations and the commission's request for habitat analysis on the site. According to the regs, the only thing that's significant requiring an assessment under 1060 is the lower floodplain habitats, which there are some on site. I'm not going to say that there's not. So we looked at those. I did look at everything up along the front of the roadway. It's a very small area compared to the larger property. So, assessing the lower floodplain, basically my assessment of the lower floodplain can be extrapolated to most of the areas along the side of the road without much change into what my conclusions were out there. To summarize the report, I did the Appendix A, which is required, which is basically a checklist, and none of the boxes got checked because there's nothing overly significant out there that would require, tripping one of those boxes to do the more detailed analysis. I did provide a write-up on my thinking and thought process on what I found out on site during our habitat walkthrough and assessment report that we did. There's really not much to share. It's more of a written report and, kind of the graphics that Mr. Whitman had provided already, which we kind of tweaked a little bit to just show the area that we looked at. But the goal of the study is to determine if the proposed project will have a significant effect on the wildlife habitat of the resource area. That's the whole purpose of doing a habitat assessment under 1060. So you look at food, shelter, migratory areas, overwintering areas for wildlife, breeding areas for birds, mammals, reptiles, that type of thing. So we did the assessment. The area is pretty disturbed already. You have the golf course family fun center on one side of the area that he's proposing clearing. On the other side is Union Street. It's a fairly thin wooded margin between the road and the golf course area. It's probably 60-ish feet wide and a couple 100 feet long along that area. It's fragmented, from other areas of the more connected floodplain on the other side of the golf course, which is closer to the brook. It's got a lot of invasive species, as you would expect, being right along the edge of the road and near other very developed areas. There's a mature tree canopy in there, a lot of floodplain species, cottonwoods, some oaks, aspens. So the tree canopy is fairly mature and tall. It's been there for a while. You can tell by the age of the trees. The sub canopy is kind of lacking, fairly dense shrub cover and lots of invasive species, lots of vines kind of covering most of the shrub layer, starting to crawl up into the trees. It's probably 75% invasive, 25% native species within that matrix, taking out the canopy, which is, a decent canopy of mature trees. The report goes through some of the dominant vegetation that we saw out there. The existing conditions on site anything's habitat. If you do habitat assessment on anything, you can't make a claim that nothing it's habitat for something, right? So I'm not going to try to claim that there's no habitat for more common species out there. There certainly is. It's ultimately up to the commission. Is that habitat significant enough to, prevent him from clearing or requiring more detailed filings? I don't really know how that's evolving behind the scenes. But from my estimation as a wildlife biologist, the area is fairly fragmented. It's highly invasive. There's not a lot of, unique habitats in there. Sure, there's cover for mammals, small mammals, medium-sized mammals. There's bird habitat. There's not a lot of hard mast forage in there other than the trees. And from what I understand of his filing, he's not proposing any tree removal. So the best habitat features in there are the tree canopy, and those won't be touched. Most of the impact from what I read and talking to Mr. Whitman is removal of the more invasive viney understory. You'll be removing some clearing some understory. They'll be removing some cover for small mammals. So there is, a slightly negative impact with that, but given the overall significance of it in the larger floodplain context, it's not overly significant. There's high fragmentation issues already out there, as you would expect. A lot of common species, everything we saw out there, nothing to write home about, your common urban adapted wildlife, possums, raccoons, squirrels, chipmunks, the usual stuff you would find in any, forested setting or quasi-forested setting. I'm sure there's a lot of, attraction to these areas just because of the use of the site as a golf course for things that are rooting through trash and, picking up ice cream wrappers and that kind of stuff. So that's the type of stuff that we see out there. That's what I expected. That's pretty much what I saw. So that's kind of the gist of the assessment. As I said, we looked at the lower floodplain, which is around 9,000 square feet of impact as it was shown on the plans of removal of vines and the more of the understory in there. You could extrapolate what I found to the larger context of that peninsula of land that sticks out, between his site and Union Street. And it's essentially the same habitats. There was really nothing different in the areas of upper floodplain than lower floodplain that would really change the assessment other than the square footage of impact. So that's kind of the summation of what we found out there. I'm obviously here to answer any questions on that context of it. I haven't been overly involved in any other aspects of the project. I know he's been talking to Dan in our office on other permitting things, but we don't have a contract yet to be involved in that as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Questions from the commission?
Yeah, if I could start. Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
Thank you. You gave a nice description of the property, what I'm going to call the before. As you're making your determination, as you're weighing significant to wildlife, not significant, what is your picture of the area when it's complete? Is your picture of that buffer area just the trees, or do you? I see Meredith said it earlier. This keeps changing. I'm not sure. What did your mind see as the after when you made your ruling that this is not significant to wildlife?
The after, I was assuming he was going to be doing removal of basically the understory would come out. So there'd be a
Right.
tree canopy left. There'd be something underneath. I don't know what, but most of the shrubbery and vines that you see from the road would be gone. So all that, whatever habitat's provided by that lower stuff would be gone.
Oops, I think we may have lost him.
Can you hear me? Oh. Yeah, he seems a little
We have
frozen.
lost everybody.
No, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm good.
Can you
I'm
hear me?
good. I can hear.
I think he's back.
Can you hear him, Tom?
I can hear, I can't hear Stephen,
Oh, all right. I'm not on mute.
but you had finished, so I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Other questions?
So, Mr. Chairman, one of the things I guess I'd like a little feedback on is I guess let's call it the quid pro quo of removing all those invasives. And there's a lot down there that are really taking over the area. So we remove the invasives, which benefits the area, but it also compromises wildlife habitat for what animals are down there. And I think I'm hearing you say that they are somewhat common animals. I guess how do we value the removal of the invasive species, the understory, against the loss of some degree of protection for those animals? And that's for Steve.
Oh, that's a question for you guys. And that's,
Sorry.
it is a balance. Like I said, I can't say that you're not going to have some effect to something, any time you cut down anything other than, like I said, if it's a mown turf lawn on a golf course or a paved swale. And to be honest, some of those even have some level of habitat value for something. You will have an effect. Removal of invasives and promotion of more native things is obviously a good thing. Those invasives are bittersweet. Some of them are crawling into the canopy and probably going to eventually start killing the canopy trees.
We need to see those.
So, that's a balance that, you as a commission can, make, squirrels and raccoons and possums, which is pretty much, the kind of the main things that go there. And, some of the more measly predators that might prey on those will occasionally go in there too, looking for forage on the smaller mammals. Like I said, it's pretty fragmented. There's not a lot of use for that area. You can always balance it with some kind of plantings, but that's more for his permitting end of the spectrum. If you want something back that provides a higher quality habitat value somewhere else or offset it, it's, something that I do a lot when I do restoration plans for habitats.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Appreciate it.
Other questions?
Yeah, can I jump right to Tony? Tony, good evening.
Hi, Tom.
I'm fine, thank you. When I was there for the site visit with Jim and with Meredith, I got the impression when we left that Dan from GZA was going to come to us, or you were going to come to us with Dan with like a phased in approach. Like phase 1 was going to be clean up near the parking lot, phase 2. And I thought there was going to be a plan presented that showed a little bit of landscaping where you're going to be removing the undergrowth. Did that happen?
Yeah, you're correct, Tom. So some maps and some drawings were submitted and generated to Meredith afterwards to kind of show how some of that phasing would be. And it is, in part, to benefit, the types of wildlife that Steve described, where, the raccoons and possums and things that would be in the disturbed area, we would leave some of the other areas so that they would have some familiar habitat to stay in. And also to act, to leave some of it to act as a visual buffer for the neighbor across the street. After meeting with them and looking at some of the issues there, we said, well, maybe we don't need to impact this entire area to get the result we want. So if we phase it in a couple pieces, that will allow more of the, the natural understory and things like that in about half of it, and then the other half, clearing out for our purposes. And
Can you show us that on a map, on a plan? Do you have that ready for tonight?
Yeah, if we can screen share, I can probably do it best on the Google Earth here. Let me see here if I can get that up.
I can share what Mr. Whitman sent.
Yeah, I've got it. Let me see if the Google Earth was giving me a really good picture that we could draw some measurements on, different than the Google map. And I think that is an easier way to look at the, at the physical characteristics and trees and things, and then look at the map for dimensions. Okay, here we go. So now I've got it queued up on my screen. If we can screen share here. All right, let's see. And if I can screen share here and pick screen 2. Okay, can everybody see that?
No.
Okay, well, here.
No,
Here. Okay, now we're in, I think.
now I'm getting it.
Okay.
Okay, and this is a pretty good picture because it shows also, you can see, some of the areas that were really disturbed and what the, sort of the fragmented nature of it. Let me see here. Okay. So the area that we're proposing impacting in the, the phased sort of approach, if you will, would be perpendicular sort of with the mini golf fence here. And then it would go about to where the pit, the pit stop over here is. So you can see, looking at the picture, this is an area that was already, really heavily disturbed in here during the construction of the stuff. If we look at some measurements here, it's going to leave, we're leaving a buffer probably of, in excess of 150 feet from, from the little paved waterway thing that's over here. And if we said, well, where would 100 feet put us, it would still, be impacting the, what we believe might be some essential sight lines from the neighbor's house there. So we think, going out at least as far as perpendicular to the, let me see, the mini golf fence, would be necessary to kind of protect those views while we can do a little bit more of a study of what the impact of the lights and things are. So, so this area here, we would cut out the invasive bittersweet and things like that. The area over here is where we would be cutting down and then mowing regularly to maintain. And then that would also allow, wildlife, that is using this space to migrate into this area here or over into the floodplain areas. It also eliminates the need for any real further study on the potential, the wetland resource that is the bank or BVW as it may be over here. So now if we go to, let's see, if we go to some maps, let me see, I have this one here. Okay, so here's, this is probably not this is a map that I drew over the original plan, marking out some of the areas. So the 10-year floodplain is only a very little piece of this. So we've delineated or marked out on here the 10-year piece of the floodplain where the habitat assessment would be required. And then actually, if you look at the 2006 LiDAR, I think it looks like it's a little bit bigger than what was on the DLB map. So it could be a little bit bigger than what's drawn here, but Steve's spoken to the habitat already. And then this area here is, would be the buffer area maintained from the the paved waterway, and then, this corner of the property, which was sort of the previously developed entrance of the parking lot, we'd be cleaning that up and then, cleaning up the edge of our parking lot here. I think in Steve's wetland report, he's got a little map in here we can look at too. Let's see where it is here. So that's the total lot. So he's got a little, he has a map here where he's delineated some of these areas. So, and these hash marks is what would be
Yeah, the hash marks are the lower floodplain.
lower floodplain. This area here is really heavily disturbed, whether it was used for compensatory storage or the ground was just disturbed and moved around. It's a little bit unclear. I thought initially that when Meredith and I had looked at it, that it was dug out for compensatory storage, but actually looking at the earlier maps in the NOI, they filled some of it in as part of that process. So it's hard to know exactly why this rectangular depression exists there. Over here, this I think is indicative of the buffer zone around the waterway here. That's another map, sort of showing those areas.
So Tony, nothing in the green circle gets disturbed, is that correct?
In the green circle, we would be hand removing invasives, primarily the bittersweet. And then along the edge of our parking lot is parking lot maintenance. So you might imagine, it's hard, when you're looking at from above, you're seeing the canopy. So the canopy of everything actually probably looks a little bit bigger than the area itself. But the edge, the edge of the parking lot, we'd be cleaning up that piece. Inside here, we would only be hand pruning of the bittersweet. And then our intention is by removing that stuff, the native stuff will fill in and allow for there to be natural understory in the area up to about, perpendicular with the mini golf fence, which is probably about here.
Yeah, and I'm kind of repeating some of what you said, but your hope is that will provide some kind of visual barrier for the home across the street?
I think so. I think if we go back to the other picture, let's see. Let's just see here. Okay, so if we look at this picture here, then we can say, if this is the line here that we're planning to work with, then there is, there's going to be quite a bit of a buffer here. It's some of these areas here. There's a little area here where the view of the field and things could be seen, or possibly even a real diagonal view from the house. But we think, some of this could collaboratively be dealt with plantings on their property too by increasing this line of vegetation. And there's a lot more conversation that could be had about that. But, my concern is more this area because it would be much harder to do anything in the front of their house to block that view. So I think it really serves a couple important functions. One is that any wildlife that's disturbed in this area will have some familiar space to go into. And if they're getting water out of the waterway, they'll be able to travel down that way. If they're, associated with the expanse of the lower floodplain over here, they can migrate this way. And then, it'll help to, phase in the impact of the work.
And Tony, how far to the right on this view, where will your limit of work stop?
It
as far as the clearing?
right about here. So this corner of the pit track, if you made a perpendicular line up, there's there's a couple different, there's a couple large trees here, and we'd be going in between the two of them. It might be a little difficult to tell from the ground, but this group of trees here would be going around that group of trees here. And then this group of trees over would be left the way it is. So I would say perpendicular with this corner of the pit stop.
And if you got a green light, where would you start? Would you start with the selective cutting, or would you start
We would
more
start
with?
over here, would come along the edge of the parking lot, and it would all happen in a day to be,
All right, you've answered my question. Yeah, that's what I wondered. I thought phased in meant, you were going to do some and then wait a month or whatever, but you're going to do it all at once, which makes sense. I understand.
Right. Well, it's about half of what the original scope of work was. So that's what's phased in, is the original area, and the area Steve studied included the entire peninsula, and we've cut it down to almost half of that. So that's where the phases come in. I say phases because we think, I'm not sure that we're going to see the need to do any more or want to do any more in here, or maybe what we want to do is creating a more, promoting the natives, the native environment, and
Right.
having
Right.
stuff that's sheltered from Union Street. I guess that's a good word, sheltered from Union Street. So
Yep. Thank you, Tony.
you're welcome.
Other questions from the commission?
I guess just a comment, if I may. If we've got sort of an isolated area with a mode or sort of largely cleared out, that area at, if you will, the sort of tip of that peninsula really is sort of isolated, and it's hard to really think of that as any kind of a quality habitat.
Well, I think Steve could speak more to that. I think one of the challenges with the whole strip is the quality of the habitat. That, it has habitat. I mean, things, like rabbits and raccoons and possums are going to occupy something like that. They'll continue to occupy it if they're, if it's even more fragmented. I mean,
I agree with that statement, Tony. It's I mean, the area is already fairly compromised. By protecting that area around the swale, you're not like doing that much. You're not really preserving much habitat. I'll just put it that way. I mean, it's an attempt, but it's already fairly isolated anyway. You just have a narrow, there's some connections on the side there, but it's pretty limited. Removal of invasives is, even just removing the invasive, you're pretty much going to be taking everything out just by taking the invasives out. It's hard to envision what's going to be left when the invasives come out, because some areas are near 100% invasives, especially in those areas you can see on that your aerial there where it's just kind of open with no canopy. Those are pretty much just big piles of bittersweet and Tartarian honeysuckle.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So if all the vegetation is coming out and it's getting mown down, is the soil going to be disturbed? And if so, what's the prevention for runoff, for prevention of soil sedimentation?
I would expect very little soil to be disturbed. We did an area over around this tree here where, we pretty much just were able to do it with lawnmowers, and then, what's left, all the roots of everything are still there holding the soil together in that case, and then new, vegetation fills in and continues. So, it's not a sloped area where I'd expect there to be an accumulation of, a lot of flow of water that would wash soils away, things like that. If something like that was observed, then I'd expect that it could be addressed timely, but it's not something that's disturbing the soil or the roots.
Okay, I have a question. You're going to use something like a brush hog to get rid of the invasives?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, what's going to prevent those from coming back? You're just going to keep mowing it? Or are you
That's
going
correct.
to dig it up and put in real grass?
No, we just keep mowing it, and then by succession, grass and clover and low-lying things will fill in. And we've done it on other projects, and it takes, it might take a season. It usually takes about a growing season to turn into something that's dense and green, whether it's grass or combination of grass and clover and other things.
I mean, have you thought of putting in native shrubs in there?
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about different things that would attract birds in particular.
There's a lot of native pollinators.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that, they're excited about. Or in the area where we're leaving and promoting the understory, Steve said, well, if you remove all the understory, there's not much left. And that may be an area where we say, okay, well, we want there to be understory here. So if the bittersweet's gone, what's the next thing that we can plant to promote some kind of wildlife that we want, namely birds over here.
One of my concerns is that, over the weeks that we've been discussing this, the plan has changed a lot. And one of my concerns is if we approve an RDA, then basically we've lost control. And my concern is future maintenance of these areas. Right now we don't have all of what we discussed this evening, in writing. You've indicated this on your maps here, but I'm just concerned that once we approve an RDA, then it's going to be hard for us to monitor it and to take care of our concerns as far as the wildlife habitat is concerned. Any questions from the audience concerning this project?
Hey, Meredith or Mr. Chairman, to your
Yes.
concerns, do we have enough written, submitted documentation that to the chair's concern that we would be able to know what's being proposed and be able to come up with an as-built when it was finished? Meredith, that's, I guess, specifically to you. Has the city received
Well,
are you
Tom,
comfortable with the documentation?
Well, Tom, we don't get an as-built from an RDA.
No, but you know what I mean. In a year, would we be able to say, hey, I thought you were going to stop there? It looks like you've gone another, not that Tony would, but it looks like you've gone way beyond what the verbal presentation was. Do we have this documented somewhere with pen and ink?
I will share the plan I received. And it just, it's it's not a survey, it's a Google map with outlines. So I don't know exactly, that's part of my confusion on this project and why I say things keep changing, because it's hard to know exactly where stuff is happening based on the maps, and then nothing's flagged in the field. So it's kind of like, oh, we're going to do this over here and nothing's staked or anything. And then let me share the plan I have. have an issue with some of the language on the plan, so I'm not comfortable approving it because it says things like areas are not jurisdictional when they clearly, the whole site is jurisdictional because it's all in bordering land subject to flooding. And I think that's just some confusion on reading the regulations, which are, they're challenging to interpret and understand. Let me show you the plan I received. And that was one of my concerns tonight. It's like exactly what Tom's asking. Okay, we approved this plan, but then how do we know in the future what exactly we're allowing? Because it's not staked out. So, Tony, if you could stop sharing for one second.
Yeah, I just, you know.
Or if you want to share the plan you provided instead,
Yeah.
I know you had that queued up.
Yeah, let me, and I do want to say the plan has changed, but the work area has gotten progressively smaller and smaller. I don't think that there's ever a time that what's been presented is different than what we, than what our intentions were. It was always to remove the understory, you know, originally it was to remove the understory in the entire area. And now we've limited it quite a bit. So I just, wanted to say that I don't think I've made any different representations to this commission from the start, except that we're changing and shrinking the area that is being effective. This is one of the plans here, and you can see, you know, we're using physical boundaries instead of maps, you know, maps or flags. We're using physical borders and boundaries. So the fence for the mini golf course is one of those boundaries coming perpendicular down here to Union Street. And then the other one is the, you know, the corner of the pit stop or the pit house coming down here. So those are the physical boundaries. The other thing, I guess, that's probably bigger than the buffer zone here, but that's, you know, that's what we're proposing. So if you looked at it, you know that we're still in there, I guess.
Okay, thank you for that's, I understand what you're, a little bit better what exactly you're proposing and what we could base things on in the future.
And you talked about the,
Could I add?
Can you show the other plan? Please.
Meredith, excuse me, before Tony shows the other plan, Tony, would be helpful though, and I understand what you're showing here graphically, but it would be extremely helpful if you dimensioned it out. You do show 100-foot buffer, okay, but it'd be helpful if on the plan you write on this is X feet by what, so we have length and width, so we know what we can work with. We're seeing it graphically. Thank you.
Yeah,
we have a physical dimension written on there.
I've put the approximate square footage on here on the bottom, so you have a sense of what that is. And then, as Meredith was saying, the other stuff was measured from the satellite picture. And you know what Meredith was saying, how I was saying it wasn't jurisdictional. I'm not sure that's the language it's on here. It says, you know, this area is believed to be outside of the resource area defined under 310 CMR 1060. So, I mean, we all agree the whole area is jurisdictional because it is 100-year floodplain, but 1060 goes on to, you know, to describe, actually 1057 is where it describes which habitat is considered significant within the 100-year, and it's anything in the 10-year or anything described in 1060. So that's why some of this area here, the pieces that are outside of the buffer zones and outside of the 10-year aren't presumed to be significant under that. So that's what this says. It doesn't say that piece doesn't say that it's not jurisdictional, unless if I've written someplace somewhere else, then that would be different. But I don't think in any place there's any language here that says something's not jurisdictional. So right here outlines the area. We maintain the understory for the privacy selectively removing, controlling invasive species.
And I understand the 67. What I'm asking for is length and width dimensioned out there. So just write it on your plan that this blue border with the black inside of it measures X by X.
I could do that for the commission.
Thank you.
Other questions from the commission?
Just that if we're even thinking about approving this tonight, we haven't talked about the area 3 or area 5, that the corner, the parking lot. I'm assuming the RDA includes that. Am I correct?
Correct. And there's a picture here, again, to show that we've trimmed down the size of that a little bit. Mostly after meeting there on the site visit, some points were made that, well, why do you need to clear such a big area for parking for conservation trails when you don't know how many people use the trail? And so that's valid. So maybe we don't need to clear as much of the space. So, so we've outlined an area here that's quite a bit smaller. Still going to give us access into the facility here. All of this area is outside of the 10-year. It's in the 100-year. It's not a habitat that would qualify under 1060. So habitat assessment wouldn't necessarily apply to that, and to to be permissible. I'm not sure to what degree that would be necessary to consider square footage, but we did shrink it down a little bit.
And Tony, how will we know in the future that polygon, how will we know that what we're approving on this map is what gets mown?
Well, I guess you'd have to keep coming out and do site visits and study it.
I don't want to do that. Well, I'm just saying, that's what we're trying to deal with here, is like trying to figure out what we approve. What we approve is what it actually gets done. And I think I just wanted to, this map is great. We have a vague sense of where the work is happening, but perhaps, flagging out the polygon prior to doing the work would be appropriate condition if we decide to move forward with trying to permit this under an RDA.
Well, I think part of the reason I brought it forward as an RDA is to look at the regulations and say what regulations would apply to the land clearing in this area. And according to 1057 in the bordering land subject to flooding, wildlife habitat assessment isn't required for this area. So, if what we're proposing is 3,000 square feet and assessment is required of, if it was 5,000 square feet, if we said we want to take the whole, 2 acres out, I'm not sure, wildlife assessment still wouldn't apply to that. So looking at it from the perspective of the RDA and saying which regs apply to this, I'm not sure, where wildlife assessment would. We've shrunken this down.
Are you saying that because it's not in the 10-year floodplain? I don't think I've seen a topographic LiDAR for this particular section.
Correct. We could look at one, but that's all 122, 124 contours.
Okay, but it's still in a resource area, so we still have to apply the performance standards. And just for the record, you are saying that you're meeting all the performance standards because you're not interfering or adding volume.
Correct.
And you're saying you don't have to do a wildlife habitat assessment because it's on the 10-year floodplain. However, I will, it's still up to the commission. One of their one of the interests of the Wetlands Protection Act is the protection of wildlife habitat. There are 7 other interests of the act. So the commission has the discretion over how they're protecting the resource and to what extent.
Correct. And 1057 is the, work standard for that resource in bordering land subject to flooding. So,
the regulation it's confusing because it talks about altering up to 10% or 5,000 square feet of BLSF.
I have the regulation. If we go to page, let me see here, a different one here, page 212.
I guess ultimately the commission has the discretion on whether this is significant wildlife habitat, and this is our 3rd meeting, so I think we have to come to some sort of conclusion.
Under definitions, if we just look at what the reg kind of says here and read through it together, and I'm worn out from meetings too. Okay, 1057 2A. Okay, the bordering land subject to flooding is estimated as the maximum lateral extent of the 100-year floodplain. Okay, it's on 214 here. Okay.
Scroll to the performance standards.
Oh man, okay, hold on. I was just
What's the concern here, Meredith?
okay. Here, certain portions of bordering land subject to flooding are likely to be significant to the protection of wildlife. These include all areas on the 10-year floodplain or within 100 feet of the bank of bordering vegetated wetland, whichever is furthest from the waterway. So that is, the definition that is used in 1057, where it talks about the square footage. That'd be page 212.
If I may, I'm going to sort of echo Meredith's concern in that right at the moment, I wouldn't be sure what exactly we were trying to approve. And I very much appreciate that you've been working with us and you've been very reasonable with us and accommodating as possible and those kinds of things. It just, as I think Jim might have mentioned, it feels a little bit nebulous, as if it's constantly changing. And in order to be sure of what we're approving, it really needs to be cut and dry and really clearly written. And I think that's our stumbling block, or at least my stumbling block at the moment.
And that's understandable, Carl. What I've done for the the purpose of trying to manage this efficiently is trimming down a lot of those areas a lot. Trimming them down a lot, making them smaller. If you look at the original RDA, that's what's changed. The areas have gotten smaller. They haven't gotten bigger. The work hasn't changed. I think the larger scope of the work is probably permissible under the regulations. We've trimmed it down, we've made it smaller, and a compromise to wildlife and a number of things. I would suggest, if we're going to stake out the area, that it, especially in the north end, would go back to the larger area that we're looking at, not.
Steve, you have a lot of experience with 310 CMR 10.57, it sounds like. Can you help us understand the regulations, and is this project permissible under the act?
As an RDA or as an NOI?
Either.
NOI, it's clearly permissible. I mean, the RDA, it's just commission's discretion. If it's, you know, if you want to say that it's got the exact checkbox, but if it's, you know, the work will adversely affect the wetland or not. I mean, and like you said, you know, we don't maybe not have to expressly do a habitat assessment, a formal habitat assessment under 10.60 because of, you know, it's not lower floodplain in other areas, but you know, wildlife is a part of the act. That is true. It's completely at the commission's discretion at that point. My habitat assessment, as I also mentioned, can be extrapolated to pretty much anything along the edge of the road. It was all, I looked at the whole strip that he wanted to propose, everything there, and even that parking area. It's all very similar habitats and very similar suite of invasive species and very similar suite of animals that use it. You know, so it's, you know, that's completely up to the commission. It's yeah, I mean, you could permit this under the RDA if you wanted to. But, you know, every commission has a different flavor and how they want to handle it. You know, I agree with you guys on the commission that it's, you know, once you permit something under the RDA, it's hard to kind of track it. So, you know, let's put it this way. I've done projects like this under very similar type projects under RDAs. I've done similar projects under notices of intent. You know, this area, this project's kind of in that gray area where you could go either way.
And yet, Steve,
That's why I'm having a hard time with this.
Yes, Tom.
yeah, Steve, I think, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I think, Steve, that we could approve this as an RDA if we had a better, how could you guys clean up the site plan so that it's easier to understand? Otherwise, you're right. Otherwise, I think maybe we do have to go to the more cumbersome and expensive NOI. But I still think we can do it as an RDA if only the documentation was a little more clear, a little.
Yeah, we haven't provided any of the site plans. I mean, that
I realize, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I mean, we could talk to Tony if it's something he wants us to do, but making a site plan that's more concise and something more in line of what you're used to seeing on a formal filing is, you know, not a heavy lift.
Yeah, like Carl, I think the applicant has been extremely favorable as far as working with us, making, as you yourself said, Tony, making the areas smaller. I know just from meeting you that you're a good thinking person when it comes to the environment. We just need something that we can put in the records and then go visit in 2 years if we had to, and all know exactly what was approved when it was approved.
And Mr. Chairman, I want to echo Tom.
Yes.
We need a solid source document from the applicant. And I echo his efforts that he's put into this project. And I think he's doing a good job, but we need a solid source document that is, as I've already asked for, dimensioned and is clearly measurable and is something that we can work from for the future.
I mean, like an engineered.
If that's a solution, and if it cannot be a dimension overlay to the current items, then it's got to be an engineered print.
Okay.
I would just add that if we're going to go into something that's going to have more conditions, more detailed map, that we want to probably go back to something that was closer to what was in the original RDA, which is a little bit larger of an area. You know, like I said, we've trimmed this down quite a bit in, you know, a mindful compromise of all these things. But now, you know, we're talking about, I don't know if we're talking about something that's going to impact our, you know, future ability to expand, you know, the parking in the north end if we need it a little bit.
No, I don't see that as, Tony, I don't see that as the case at all. That, you know, but, you know, for instance, the irregular shape, the hockey puck shape, I mean, okay, you said it was, I don't know, 6,000 square feet, whatever it was, it's irrelevant. But we need it dimensioned out that it's this X by X by X by X at this defined location. You
So
know?
one of the challenges is the accessibility to these areas with, with the, what do you call it, with the multi-floor rows and the bittersweet and stuff. You can't really get in there to get a good enough sense of the topography and things like that to really map it out the way you want, and for us to even be able to say for certain, well, this is, this is.
I'm personally willing to, take dimensions plus or minus 3 feet or something like that, as long as we've got something to work with. And it's once again, a source document to go forward to in the future. As we get closer to permitting this in some way, shape, or form, we need something that's on file that is what we permitted. If you want to stage it and say, this is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and put that in the notes, that's fine. But right now, we need something.
Other questions?
Can we, for the sake of having something, can we outline a much bigger area and then we'll be sure to stay within it? Is that seem like a sensible solution that we can agree on today? If we go back and look at the map, and at the north end of the map, let's say we took this area here. I wonder if I could draw a polygon on it.
Can you show the PDF with your?
Okay.
We really need to move on. I mean, we have many other hearings tonight. I can briefly show the plan we provided. GZA, they could probably quickly put together a GIS map showing all the areas on one map. And so we can have a source document with links. What they put on the map is what you end up doing, cutting in the field. And I'll show the commission. We'll give this 8 more minutes, but
I think we want to go back to something a little closer to just so that you don't feel like I'm, changing.
This is what we have right now, everyone. So clearing the edge of the parking lot. That's one area. And Tony did estimate the square footage, so we don't know exactly width and length. Then the area that he was estimating based off of the go-karts and the mini golf, this square is being totally cleared from understory. Trees are being left. And correct me if I'm wrong, because this is my just summary of what we've been told in the past month and a half. This area I thought was being left alone, but it seems though now he is going to just control invasive species. So is that removal of bittersweet? I mean, the whole area is invasive, so that's kind of the same thing as what is proposed if that's the south. And then we do have the north area here. Let me just go to this one. Where'd it go?
Meredith, if I can ask one question that you can help clarify from a regulatory perspective, and the north end here, is there a difference between clearing the hockey puck shape or the hockey stick shape and clearing, the 2 acres that would go from the trees down to the house here?
I mean, it's all in bordering land subject to flooding. It's all subject to regulations.
And clarify for me, what are those regulations with respect to wildlife and habitat?
Mr. Chairman, can I suggest that we move forward? And we really have quite a large agenda tonight. And if we have to continue this, maybe it's to the really to the benefit of the applicant and to everybody. I'm prepared to put a motion on the table for that.
I think we're still, in a quandary of which way to go. And so I'd say that's okay. I think, we need a better source document, or perhaps use those maps, but have more written explanation. So, I can work with Meredith and Tony and see what's the best way to go from here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to put a motion on the table that we continue this until July what now?
27th.
July 27th.
Do we have a second?
I'll give that a second.
Any further discussion?
Just that, it may not really be appropriate for the discussion, but Tony, one of the things exciting about this project was your nature trails. And they weren't even discussed tonight. They're not on your plans anymore, unless you're planning to come back to us again with a new RDA. But I don't want to discuss it because it's probably not even correct discussion. So just think about that, please.
Tom,
Mr. Chairman?
part of it. I don't know where it would have fallen off of
Okay,
the.
Tom, those are still on the RDA.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick question. Does Tony have what's the board's opinion on removing invasive species? Just that part of it. I'm not talking about everything else that he's talking about, but stuff that's going to be strangling those trees or the bittersweet or stuff like that. I mean, is the board against that?
Okay, Cliff, our discussion is on tabling, on
Okay.
continuing.
All right. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but that's
I'll
where
remove
we
it.
are.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
remove it. Okay.
Okay, we can, we can get to that later. And for discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Tom,
I'll vote yes to continue.
Jim,
Yes, to continue.
Yes.
okay, Cliff,
I'm going to abstain.
okay, and I'll vote yes as well. Thank you. So we'll be in touch, Tony, and try to clear all of this up.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks.
Yep, good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, item B, 275 North Elm Street. So in accordance with provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, public meeting will be held on July 13, 2021 by virtual meeting. This hearing is for a request for determination of applicability submitted by Peter Urbanek for the removal of 2 trees in the 200-foot riverfront area to Powder Mill Brook, located at 275 North Elm Street in Westfield. Meredith.
Mr. Chairman, I need to take a brief break here. I'll be back momentarily. I'm not necessarily recusing, but I have to take a break.
Okay. Do we have Mr. Urbanek with us? Yes, we do.
I think we do. Looks like he's on an iPhone. Mr.
Thank you. Okay, did we spell his name wrong?
Don't think, I'm not sure. Peter, is that you on an iPhone? You have to unmute if you have joined us. I met Mr. Urbanek at the site. It's a industrial property, Precision Manufacturing, I believe is his business. It's right next to the Whip's Pub or something. I forget. I'm so sorry. I can't remember the name of the pub. But anyways, Powder Mill Brook is right kind of on the edge of his parking lot. There's a vegetated buffer, and there's 2 trees that he wants to cut down. They're very large. One's a very large cottonwood that does seem to be dying or not doing well. And then one is a very large willow with 3 stems. I have some photos I'll show you. And, he's concerned that they're going to fall in the parking lot and damage cars, et cetera there. My assessment is that The cottonwood does look like it's dying and could be removed. And then the willow has 3 large stems, and 2 of the stems seem very healthy and are shading Powder Mill Brook. And one of the stems has some dead branches. It didn't seem that unsturdy, if you will. So I can show you some photos real quick. They're not right on the bank, just to clarify. They're probably 15 feet off the bank of the river. Okay, can you guys see? Can you see a
Yes.
photo?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the cottonwood. See the edge of his parking lot. It's, probably not doing well because there's bittersweet growing around it. He did cut some of the vines and it has died back. I don't know. It's not doing great. Let's see. And then this is the willow. See how it has 3 stems? So it's a very large tree. There's some dead branches kind of on the furthest one to the right. And so here it is again. Let's see if you could, this is also the willow. He has cut some bittersweet off of it. You could see the river's down here. So there's maybe a 10, 15 foot vegetative buffer between the bank of the river and this tree. I mean, my recommendation is do you guys have any questions, first of all?
Yes, go ahead. Questions? Well, the cottonwood is definitely leaning towards the parking lot.
Yes.
Okay. And is the entire willow leaning towards the parking lot?
I would say only maybe one of the branches of one of the stems.
Mhm.
The rest of it is leaning towards the river.
Okay, so an arborist could take that one stem off of there.
I think they could do that. Yeah, it seems. And it's right on the edge of a parking lot, so the access is really good.
So the other 2 stems could then maintain a shading on top of the brook.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Questions?
I for one am totally confident in Meredith's assessment of the situation.
I am as well.
Okay. So that would be to remove one of the branches on the willow that's
Correct.
leaning towards the parking lot. Okay. All right. Any other comments?
Well, the willow and the other tree, Meredith, you said is almost dead, right?
I said the cottonwood looks like it's not doing well.
So
the willow looks healthy.
Were you recommending the cottonwood and one stem on the willow?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay. Yep. That's fine with
Yep.
me.
Okay. Any other concerns? Okay. Any questions about this particular project from the audience? All right. Seeing none, entertain a motion to close the public meeting.
So moved.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Tom?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
Carl?
Yes.
Kim?
Abstain.
And I'll vote yes as well. Okay, do we have a motion on the recommendation?
Yeah, I'll motion that we issue a -3 determination with the following conditions. That the commission will be notified of the work start date. The coordinator, well, we did approve the trees. We have approved that the cottonwood can be removed, and the willow will just take the one limb off of it. Only tree stems will be cut, no stumping. Removal of bittersweet vine is allowed and encouraged, and snow storage shall be relocated to another side of the parking lot. That's my motion.
Okay, you have a second?
I'll second that.
Right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Tom,
I'll vote yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Jim,
Abstain?
and I'll vote yes as well. Thank you. Okay, item C, 700 East Mountain Road. So in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, public meeting will be held on July 13th, 2021 by virtual meeting. This hearing is for a request for determination of applicability submitted by Cellco Partnership, Verizon Wireless, for the construction of a wireless telecommunication tower and associated overhead and underground fiber conduits located at 700 East Mountain Road in Westfield. We have an applicant towards this particular project.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dean Gustafson. I'm a senior wetland scientist with All Points Technology here tonight on behalf of Cellco Partnership doing business as Verizon Wireless.
Well, thank you. Go ahead and present your project.
So can everyone see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. So out of respect to the commission's time this evening and the remaining agenda items, I'll make my presentation brief. Verizon is proposing a wireless communications facility consisting of a 125-foot tall monopole tower with a 50 by 50 compound located in the southern portion of the subject parcel at 700 East Mountain Road. This is a property that's owned by John S. Lane and Son, and it is the headquarters of their quarry operation. So this is an aerial view of the southern portion of the subject property. What's being highlighted on this screen is the existing access road to the quarry. And I'm just following it with my cursor over here. There's a way station in through here. And then there's a gravel access road that heads to the southern portion of the subject property. This is a rail car loading area. The proposed facility will utilize this existing gravel access road. And then just along the west side of that, the facility will be constructed with a short spur gravel access, 12-foot wide gravel access road. None of the project activities are located within any wetland resource areas or associated buffer zones or riverfront area. And where the actual tower facility is being proposed, there's no wetland resource areas located within 400 feet. So what we do have is there is an existing overhead utility run that comes from East Mountain Road, following my cursor through here, that's just south of the access road that provides access into the quarry. That aerial distribution line runs over an unnamed perennial stream that flows south, and there are associated bordering vegetated wetlands. And what we've shown here is the delineated limits of the wetland resources, both north and south, the existing access road and this distribution line. And the reason why I'm pointing out this distribution line is that for bringing in, power is already being provided for a large degree of the project. There's distribution lines that run along this access road, but Verizon needs a fiber line to be brought in for their telecommunication service. We'll be utilizing this existing overhead distribution line. It then goes into existing conduits and then into a manhole. And then eventually it goes back overhead. So there won't be any ground disturbance associated with that activity. But this is the only work activity that's has any intersection with either the Wetland Protection Act or the Westboro wetland bylaws. This is our wetland map put on an aerial photograph just to provide some additional clarity. Again, what I'm following here is the existing overhead distribution line. And then it goes existing underground and then overhead. Here we're showing both the bank resource and the boring vegetated wetlands. What's shown highlighted in yellow here is the 100-foot buffer zone, and then this purple line is the 200-foot riverfront area. So this is the same information provided on the project site plans. Again, we'll be utilizing the existing overhead distribution lines hanging the fiber line over here. There's from this existing underground conduit to this utility manhole, there's existing conduits that will be placing the fiber line under. And then from this manhole, we'll be providing a new underground conduit to this utility pole here, and then it'll be overhead the rest of the way. So the only earthwork in proximity to the resource area starts at this existing utility manhole and heads to the east. So we're well beyond the 200-foot riverfront area associated with this nearby resource. And then this is kind of a blow up of the proposed compound. It's a 50 by 50 fenced compound, gravel base. There's a concrete pad for equipment cabinets. There's a propane fired emergency backup generator. And then this is the 125-foot utility pole, telecommunications pole. And then we have a 12-foot wide gravel access drive that's being proposed with a short turnaround, and that'll tie into the existing gravel access road for the facility. So as I had mentioned, we have no activities within any wetland resource areas or buffer zones or riverfront area. So we're respectfully requesting the commission issue a -4 determination for this project. And that's the conclusion of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dean, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, go ahead.
In your RDA, did you ask for a -2 or a -4?
We requested a -4.
4.
What's the difference, Dean?
The -4 is the recognition that the project doesn't have any activities either under the Wetland Protection Act or the bylaws.
And -2?
I'd have to look up the difference, but I think -2 is that the work activities won't have an adverse effect to the resources, but there is some jurisdiction under the Wetland Protection Act regulations or the bylaw regulations. But I'd also defer to Meredith if she could provide any additional clarification in that matter.
Yeah, let me just read what the choices are. So a -2 is the work described in the request is within an area subject to protection under the act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, the work does not require filing a notice of intent. And a -4 is the work described in the request is not within an area subject to protection under the act, including buffer zone. Therefore, said work does not require filing a notice of intent unless and until said work alters an area subject to the protection under the act.
So Meredith, are you switching it to #2 because the overhead line goes over a wetland?
I've never issued a #4 before, but my inclination was to issue a -2 because the overhead wire goes over riverfront, and BVW and buffer zone, but it's over the resources, so it's a little weird.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, Meredith. I mean, for the applicant, we'd have no objection whether the commission issues a -2 or a -4. So I understand your perspective. It is kind of an oddball.
Yeah.
We have no actual, ground disturbance within the resource areas, but they are going to be stringing a line over them. So, I can certainly understand, the interpretation for a -2 may be appropriate in this case.
I'd be more comfortable with the 2, I guess.
I have one
It
question. Oh,
It
sorry.
accomplishes the same effect. you know.
Yeah, it's almost the same
Right.
outcome.
Go ahead, Meredith.
No, I just wanted to know, how will they string the line without touching the ground there?
Yeah, so,
Yes.
yeah, it's a great question. I mean, what they would, they're right, as of right now, this access, this distribution line, it is a pretty wide, clear path off of East Mountain Road. And it provides access to, I believe, this pole right here at the angle point. From there, you start losing, you're dropping slope, you get into mature vegetation. So what they could do is they could get a bucket truck up to this pole and provide some support. But to be able to bring the line from this point to this pole is going to require some man work on the ground to bring in a fiber line and get it across. And then they'll probably have a bucket truck support here, string it up to the top, and then they can take the slack out of the line. So, more likely than not, they may not physically put boots through the wetland. They may kind of try to skirt around, but they may end up trying to walk across kind of the wetland edge, but it'd all be on foot. So there's no vehicle access in through this area, and there wouldn't be any vehicles encroaching into the buffer zones within this area or within the resource area. It'd just be by foot.
Okay.
So I think because of that, number 2 is appropriate.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, and other questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, any questions from the audience concerning this project? Seeing none, entertain a motion to close the public meeting.
So moved.
A second,
Second,
further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carl,
yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Cliff? Cliff,
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Oh, yes, as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, folks.
All right, item D, City of Westfield.
Oh, wait.
Works.
Don't we have
Yeah,
to issue?
let me make a motion first.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping
That's
ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion that we issue a -2 determination with the following condition: that the commission is notified of the work start and work completion dates, and also that erosion controls will be installed and approved by the commission or the coordinator prior to work commencing. That's my motion.
I'll second that.
Are erosion controls on the map? Are they necessary, Meredith?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was either on my notes, I was saying either a -2, which means they're just free to do the work, as is a -3, because I wasn't sure if there was disturbance in the buffer zone near the existing utility right away when I wrote the notes earlier. So
In that case, let me strike erosion controls from my motion. Obviously, that's not necessary.
Okay, under -2, Tom, please recite the words that are in parentheses there. Number 5.
Sure, the -2 determination, which means the work described in the request is within an area subject to protection under the Act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, said work does not require filing a notice of intent.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
You're welcome.
So I'll second that revision.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Cliff,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
I'll vote yes.
Carl,
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Thank you. Okay.
thanks,
now
Dean.
Great. Thanks,
Thank
Mary.
you.
Thank you, folks. Appreciate your time.
Okay, now we go to D.
Good night, Dean.
So in accordance with provisions of Massachusetts general laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, public meeting will be held on July 13, 2021 by virtual meeting. This hearing is for a request for determination of applicability submitted by Scott Hathaway of the Department of Public Works, Land and Natural Resources for vegetation management throughout the city. Do we have our applicant? I don't think
I
so.
saw him earlier, but that was a long time ago.
We wore him out.
I think we wore him out. He starts work at 7, so he's probably out of here.
Okay, well, this is basically a continuation of what we've have approved in the past.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to talk to Scott before the meeting. You guys, this was a RDA in 2016. I don't have any idea where the work is proposed. Like, there's no maps, but we have a vegetation management plan from a consultant that you previously approved with a -2. I don't know if you want to approve it tonight or wait till Scott can join us next time to kind of tell us what he's doing where. I don't know.
I think that would be appropriate, especially if we can put him up toward the beginning of the agenda so that we can get him home.
Yeah, I can put him
So-
first.
All right, is the commission in agreement?
I would like to concur with that suggestion. Also, I'd like to add that we've had this blanket in place for a number of years now. I'd like to see how it's working. I think it's been working okay, but let's make sure this is the right approach for the city to go forward on these projects. Save a lot of time and effort.
Okay,
Yeah, and one other thing to consider is RDA versus NOI. They're going to have to keep coming back every 3 years. And maybe that's a good thing, so we get some updates.
Yeah, that's what we need, and some updates also.
Okay. I'll reach out to Scott this week.
So
All right, thank you.
Are you prepared to take a motion, Mr. Chairman?
yes, I am.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue this to our next meeting of July 23rd, maybe?
27.
27.
There we go.
Okay,
I'll second that motion.
all right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Carl,
Yes.
Jim,
Yep.
Tom. Tom,
Tom's frozen.
okay. Cliff,
Yes.
okay. Tom,
I'll vote yes.
okay, thank you.
Sorry, my screen froze. I don't know how long. Am only I having that problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, from what I can tell.
Okay, apologize.
That's okay. You're back.
Okay, we're coming up to an item that I need to recuse from. So Jim, you can take over.
Sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I missed some of that.
Okay. If you look at the bottom of the page, we're going to take a motion to move the agenda out of order, discuss item 5D, enforcement first.
Okay.
And that is the Pontusic one, which I recuse myself from.
Okay, 5D.
So
Yeah,
I'll give you a motion that we, Mr. Chairman, that we take out of order and discuss 5D enforcement at this time. And then we'll come back to the normal agenda, to the normal schedule.
Okay, do you have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Carl,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Jim,
Yep.
Tom,
Yes.
and I'll vote yes. So Peter, just stick me in the waiting room.
I think oh, did he go in? Oh, he got him in there. Okay.
He's gone.
He's gone.
Okay, all right.
Disappeared.
So I believe this is 88 Furtown Road.
So no, this is 170 Pontusic and 0
I apologize.
Pontusic.
170 and 0 Pontusic. Okay, Michael Bryant, Gene Beltran, declaring vegetation, installation of a fire pit, storage of materials in a 100-foot buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetlands and stream. And we have already discussed some of this. So Meredith, could you give us an update?
Yeah, so we had to issue an enforcement, and Mr. Bryant has complied with most of the conditions we had set forth in the enforcement order.
Okay.
Do you want to go through that, Mr. Bryant, or do you want me to?
Sure. Were you able to pull up the restoration plan?
Yes,
I don't
so
have-
Mr. Bryant provided us a written restoration plan, which I'll share. And I think he goes over everything. So hang on, let me just share. Where is it?
And just a question about as far as the original enforcement order. You said I complied with most of it. I believe I complied with everything that was on it. And if I missed something, I'll certainly attend to that, but I don't believe I did.
Okay, I might have
Thank you.
misspoke. Okay, so we were provided a restoration plan and let me see. Do you want to just go over? Oh, thank you. This is a very good plan. You went over everything we had asked for.
Yeah, so the original enforcement order had all of the items there that I marked as removed on certain dates. So took care of the solar lights, the kindling and stick piles, removed the trailer and the carport, and then all the items that were in the fire pit area, like the wicker furniture and tables, the firewood pile and the firewood rack. So I made sure to have everything that you had on the original order removed from there. There was just one thing on there that was a little unclear what was meant by brush piles. So I addressed that on the very last bullet. But we can go through all of the bullets of the restoration plan if you'd like. Does that work?
Yeah, you could just go over things.
Yeah, a brief summary of each one would be fine. Okay, thank you.
Sure. I have permission from the property owner to be on his property restoring the area up until August 15th. So I put that as a date for each of these. There's a rock border that I put around the fire pit patio area, just small rocks. I'll pick up all those rocks. I made the fire pit itself with some large flat stones. So I'll get rid of all those stones and fill the hole in for the fire pit with topsoil. The whole fire pit area, I had wheelbarrowed in some bluestone. So that's kind of what makes up the whole fire pit area itself. So I will rake up all of the bluestone as much as I can. A lot of it's kind of pushed into the ground. So can't promise I'm going to get all of it, but I'll do a good job of getting as much of it out of the area as I can. When that's done, I can plant the whole area with wildflower seeds, or if there's something else that the commission would prefer that I plant down there, I can do that. And then the last thing to address is the area where I have been putting my lawnmower grass, leaves, and other brush down adjacent to my fire pit area. There's about 30 years of stuff down there. All the property owners prior to me have been using that same area. I don't think I can get rid of that by August 15th without bringing in some kind of equipment. So I was hoping if the committee wants me to remove all that stuff, that I could, get a bobcat down in there to fully remove it. Otherwise, it's unlikely that I'll be able to get anything other than just, what's kind of sitting on top. And the last thing, if you can scroll down a little bit, Meredith, I addressed the walking path that comes from the edge of the grass of my property and kind of leads perpendicular down to the stream. That walking path kind of goes from my backyard and it goes all the way up Proven Mountain. It's heavily used, so there's very little vegetation on the path itself, if any. It's mainly just wood and any other debris that has fallen out of trees, that sort of thing. And the part on my property, I stoned in with that same bluestone. So I'm just asking a request on the commission to allow me to leave the stone just on the path, which would otherwise just be dirt anyway, because I'm walking on it every day. So that's my plan.
Thank you. Meredith, can you weigh in on his request to keep the stone there?
Am I muted? No. I think that's fine. I think getting rid of the stone is going to cause more problems. And it is a commonly used trail. if Mr. Beltrandi, who owns well, I guess he doesn't own all that. I'm not quite sure where the property line starts and ends, but if Mr. Beltrandi is okay with the stone trail, I think that's okay. And I will comment on I don't think getting a bobcat into the wetland is a good idea. I would just say, let's, try to remove the leaves and brush and grass piles by hand, and let's not have additional lawn clippings into the wetland in the future.
With that part of it, as far as the timing is concerned, I don't know how much of it I can remove, in a 4-week period. So I will do my best and get as much of it out of there as I can.
Thank you. Meredith, is there a shed involved here, or?
So the reason and Mr. Beltrandi has a question here. Should I stop sharing? So this is the enforcement piece, and subsequently Mr. Bryant filed an RDA for a shed on his property. So I wanted the enforcement discussed first, and next we'll open the hearing for the shed. But it was all kind of, one thing had to be done before the next. I did receive a hold harmless agreement from Mr. Beltrandi. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but thank you for sending that along.
All right, thank you. So I guess procedurally we should deal with the order.
Yes.
Get that clarified and probably I want to open this up to the commission for any questions or comments, please.
It looked, Mr. Chairman, it looked like John wanted to say something. Do you want to make it clear he's welcome to speak?
Yes, I think after the commission speaks, or then John's on board. Sure. John?
Thank you. I have visited the site since we've had the 2 site visits. I'm very good with everything that's been done. I don't think removing the blue stone that's left there is going to do anything productive. I think it'd be more destructive than anything. If it just stays in place, I think it works better. I think by raking it up, you might disturb some area that would wash into the brook. So I think what he's done to this point is good. As far as the removal of all of the debris that's been there, it's been a substantial removal. I mean, there's, he's not responsible for 30 years, but he's probably removed 20 years of it. The rest that is there is, without using a piece of equipment, would be near impossible to get out of there because it's just been, a pile for so long. So, I don't have any problem where it is. And I think Meredith and some of the commission has been out there. I don't think it's going to migrate to the brook. I think if it just remains like it is without any further addition to it and just let it go away naturally, I think it'll be fine.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else from the public that has a comment on this? Okay, so back to Meredith. Do you think we should keep this enforcement order open, or well, we should probably until it's August at least?
Well, we need to approve the restoration plan that I was just sharing that Mr. Bryant provided. I wasn't sure, John, were you referring to the fire pit area or the path area?
Well, it's kind of a combination of, it just kind of migrates in, but the fire pit's gone. So there's some stone there that I think if you disturb the stone, you're actually going to, allow some siltation if you get a heavy rain like we've had into the brook area. So I think if you just leave what's there, it's probably better. And as far as the path area is not on his property so much as it is on mine. So, and there's been no real destruction of the path area. Once you get across the bridge, there's no stone, there's no alteration. So I don't think there's anything there that we need to be concerned about.
Thank you, John. So I guess there's going to be a need for 2 motions, one to continue the enforcement order till after August 15th, and the next is to approve the plan. So if that's the proper thing and everybody agrees, could I have a motion for those?
I'll make that. I'll make that motion, but I do think that, excuse me, John, I'll make that motion, but I do think we should give second consideration to the 2 points that both Mike and John are making. And like you, Meredith, putting a piece of equipment down there is certainly not anything we want to do. I'm totally willing to waive picking up the bluestone. I'm totally willing to stop trying to clean up 30 years of leaf debris.
Oh, of course.
Knowing that the landowner now knows not to put it there. So I'll make the motion, but I think we need perhaps to amend the.
Could you put that in your motion that you make them, but we strike those 2 items?
That would be my motion, yes.
Please. And do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. And I'd like to also sort of put in the record that I think this has been a really successful effort, and I'd commend the landowner on his prompt responses to all these issues.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion on this? If no, Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
I'll vote yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion passes.
Mr. Chairman, before we leave this, Michael, how do we help people like you understand that there are things you can't do near a resource area? To us, it's like breathing. We realize that. I mean, could we somehow advertise better? Could we somehow?
Is there something that happens when you're purchasing a home as a part of the home purchase where perhaps it could be more of something that's brought up during the purchase and before you buy? Like this is you're within Wetlands Protection Act. These are the types of things that you can't do or disturb in this area. I know for sure that wasn't mentioned to me during the buying of my property, and had it been, we wouldn't be talking at all right now. Of
course. Yeah.
So that's certainly one thing. As far as advertising, I'm not sure to what audience you would, who would actually see that and know, if that makes sense. But definitely a suggestion would be to have something for any, purchase of a home in Westfield where they're within the Wetlands Protection Act, that they just somehow it be made aware.
Thank you.
Or like an offer.
Can I recognize John?
Yes. Thank you, Jim. Jim, you've been around a long time, like I have been. You were here when we permitted all these things years ago.
Yes, you did one of the first restorations in the city.
Yes, and
replications, restorations. Yes.
When we did Janelle Drive, as you remember,
at the foot of the drive.
Our dear friend Ken was on the commission at the time.
That's right.
And we had in Jack Leary, and
yes,
they drew a line in the sand, and they said, we're going to permit these properties on the left side of Janelle Drive to have 35-foot backyards so that they don't encroach upon the wetland. And of course, we abided by that, and we sold all the properties, and we did this. And shortly after that, everybody went and put in an in-ground pool and extended their backyard, and basically just blew through that 35 feet. And if you go there now, as Meredith well knows, she's been there. These properties have all extended well within that area, but successive owners don't really have any grasp on what was done when these properties were done back in 96 or 98. So when they come in and they do these things, a lot of them don't get permits. Some of them do, and there's some granting of further access to closer to the wetlands. But in Mr. Bryant's case, he inherited something there that he had no idea, what was going on. And, me as an abutter and an owner, I didn't go back there to see what was going on. So I couldn't educate him as to that, but it's very difficult to, successive owners going on. They just don't have any idea as to what the restrictions were when they were originally done.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I have one comment about that. Why wasn't the order of conditions recorded? I mean, one thing we could do is have an order of conditions for every subdivided lot. And then when someone did when they did the deed research, they would ask if there was a COC. I don't know.
And that the order of conditions, it goes with the property, so it never goes away. All right, but
Yeah.
understand this. So understand this. What happens is, owner A buys the property as a when I developed it, and he has a 35-foot backyard, and he sells it to owner B. Well, by the time he sells it to owner B, that property line has grown 10 feet towards the wetland, okay, just from migration. And then owner B buys it, and then they go and they say, well, we're going to put a pool in. So they extended another 10 feet. And, this is what happens. It just systematically, it just keeps growing. And you don't have the resources to go out and monitor these things. There's just no way you can do it. Okay, I'm aware of that. So, I look at these things later on, 20 years after the fact or 25 years after the fact, and I say, I was bound by a 30-foot rear yard line, and now there's 70 feet. Okay, but there's no way that you could monitor that unless somebody came to you and said somebody's encroaching on this. And until you have a situation where, sometimes neighbors get into a dispute, as you well know, that's when you become aware of where things are. So, it's nothing on the commission. There's no way that you could do it.
Yeah.
So, once you become aware of it, then you can come back and say, okay, well, there was a 35-foot line, but now that line is increased by this much. But now you have to repair it. There's nothing you can do. You're not going to recreate 35 feet of wetlands. It's not going to happen.
Thank you.
And I mean, yeah, if a pool has already been installed without a permit, I mean, we're going to make them take the pool out in the buffer zone?
It's
I
not practical.
time to follow that up. But anyways, it's a good point, Tom. And, I got to somehow update our website. We could have a Facebook page kind of promoting Wetlands Protection Act.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
should talk about all those things. But I believe we have a motion in front of us, right?
I believe, Colleen, we have not voted on that motion. Is that correct? Yes, we did. We voted on the motion. Right. Now we need a second motion, though, to continue the enforcement order till project is done. I guess end of August.
Jim, I think the project is done.
Parts of the work go till August 15, I thought.
No, that was just the window I gave him to do it.
Okay.
He's accomplished that within the time frame that we've already had.
Yeah,
So-
I think the only thing on there that I list that you're not striking is the planting of the wildflowers. Not sure how that will work with the rocks there. That they may not take.
Meredith?
To revisit, you're not going to remove any stone along the river by hand,
yeah.
like picking some. I know. I am also. John's point was removing all that stone is going to create a big hole next to the river, and we're going to have open soil, and we're getting so much rain. It's a sensitive area. I wonder if just raking some of that stone by hand. I mean, vegetation was popping through the stone when we were out there.
There's
I think
quite a
if you
more,
could
bit more than now than since you were there. So yeah.
it's probably fine just to leave it, I guess, or just.
And I was there yesterday, Meredith. I walked out there yesterday with my son.
Okay.
And there's quite a bit coming through that stoned area. So I'm not sure if disturbing that is the best thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a
And that was our last motion. We amended the enforcement order and removed the stone removal. And we removed the requirement that he get the leaves and the brush up off the bank. But with that said, Meredith, I think John's right. I think this matter may be, except for the wildflowers, if you really want to pursue that.
I would love to. They look nice.
In that case, I'll give a motion that we continue this until the 27th, giving the applicant a chance to spread some seed, and we'll discuss it. You guys don't need to be here, I'm pretty sure, next time.
Maybe just send me some photos and I can update the commission.
Thank you. Can I have a second on that, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
I'll vote yes to continue.
Cliff?
Yes.
And Jim, I'll continue. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So now I believe the process is to go to E. regarding the request to install a shed with a foundation in the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. Okay, so could you talk about this, Michael?
So do we need a motion to
Yes,
go back to normal order? I'm sorry.
I'm going to make a motion that we return to the normal order.
Okay. And then,
Can I have a
thank you.
second, please?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, Carl,
Yes.
Tom,
I'll vote yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Jim, yes. Thank you,
We
Tony.
should probably bring back our normal chair as well.
Oh, I think he's
Yeah.
still recused.
He
Yeah,
needs
I
still
think
to be recused. Okay.
Okay,
But Mr. Chair, you'd want to read in the notice into the record.
I will, yes. We have the applicant on 170 Pontusic Road, Michael Bryant, map 8R, parcel 15, would like to install a shed with a foundation in the 100-foot buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands. In accordance with the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, a public meeting will be held on July 13th, 2021 by virtual meeting. This hearing is for the request for determination of applicability submitted by Michael Bryant for the construction of a shed in the 100-year buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands located at 170 Pontusic Road. Michael, can you talk about your project, please?
Yes, certainly. So I'm looking to build a 16 by 20 shed right up on the grass area of my lawn. And the area where I wish to build it is about 93 feet from the stream. So we'll go 93 feet and then 16 feet away from that. So I'm also looking for the foundation for the shed to be like a monolith pad. So it's going to be cement poured, have gravel underneath it, and build a silt fence on the stream side of it so that there's no sediment or debris or anything that would possibly wash, down from the shed towards the stream. It'll just be a wood shed, framed out with 2x4s, 2x6s, have a metal roof, and it'll have wood siding as well.
Okay, thank you. Does the commission have any questions on this? Tom?
You're going to build this shed, Michael?
Yes, sir.
Was there a shed that you moved? And if so, did that just become obsolete? I think we just lost him.
I know he had a carport in the pretty close to the wetland that he removed, and he had a trailer pretty close to the wetland that he removed. So I believe he wants to put the shed further up into his lawn and to take care of the storage he was using in the carport and the
Okay.
Trailer area.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna let it.
He looks like he might be coming on back.
Yeah, he's coming back.
Michael?
Yes,
There he
my
is.
apologies. Yeah,
There he
a phone
is.
call came in and kicked me out of the meeting. I apologize.
That's okay. So
Um,
where were we?
So you were interpreting what you think Michael's going to be doing regarding the shed, Meredith.
Yeah, it was Tom's question, right?
I think someone asked me if I was going to be building a shed myself, and yes, I will be building myself.
Okay, thank you.
My only question at this point is what is a -3? I've learned more about 2s and 4s. Why did you recommend a 3, Meredith?
-3 is for work in the buffer zone. Hold on, let me read it to you again. Basically says, yes, this work is in the buffer zone, but it won't impact the resource area, so it's allowed with conditions. That's -3. I can read it to you if you'd like. Ready?
Yep.
The work described in the request is within the buffer zone as defined in the regulations, but will not alter an area subject to protection under the Act. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent, subject to the following conditions, if any. It's really for buffer zone work. Sometimes we use it for resources.
Yep, understood.
Um,
This looks pretty straightforward, Mr. Chairman. I'm ready to give you a motion, but we should invite outside comment if there is anyone listening.
I agree. I do have one question before we open it to the public, and that is, Mike, on the soil that you'll be removing, how do you plan on disposing of that?
So I've hired Mr. Beltrandi to do the work, so they'll take the soil away in the trucks.
Okay, thank you. And you'll be putting down erosion controls?
Yeah, I think they refer to it as a silt fence.
Correct.
Is that the correct term? Yes.
Yep.
You sure you don't want to just build the shed on his land, Mike? No, thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
I don't think that would go over well.
Is anybody in the public wish to comment on this project? Mr. Beltrandi would.
Yes, actually, I'm going to speak in favor of this project. I think that this gentleman has done a good job of cleaning up something that he had something to do with, but not everything. And he's going to, do a good job of staying out of the resource area as much as possible. And we also, as the contractor that will do the sub work, will make sure that we protect it as well.
All right, thank you. Anybody else from the public? I'm willing to take a motion on this project from the board. Tom?
I'll make a motion.
Or Carl, please.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we approve this with a -3 determination with the
Sorry.
following. Oh,
Sorry, you have to close the public meeting first.
thank you, Colleen. I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing. How about that?
Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you. Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
Jim, yes. Okay, now we'll welcome that second motion, please.
I will make a motion then that we approve this project with a -3 determination and with the following conditions in place. The commission will be notified of the work start date. The commission or their coordinator will be approved the erosion controls prior to the work starting. And just a note that no leaf litter or lawn clippings shall be stored in the BVW or buffer zone.
Thank you. Can we have a second, please?
I'll make a second.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or discussion on this? If not, Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
Jim? Yes. It passes. Good luck to you, Mike.
Thank you very much. Thank
Yeah,
you,
good
everyone.
luck.
And
Thank you,
John,
Rob.
thank you for participating. Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that I believe we're going to bring back the chair. And I believe we're now at item 5B.
Yes, that's correct.
I'll second the motion that we reinstitute Dr. Doe as our chair.
And can I have a second, please?
I'll
I'll
second.
second. Oh, go ahead.
Cliff?
I'll second.
Oh, no, I need a vote.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay, Tom?
I'll second.
Yes. Carl?
Yes.
Jim, yes. David, you're back to work now.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Item 5, enforcement. 395 and 394 Northwest Road. So we've got an updated plan, and we need a motion to approve the plan. Anything to add from what we see in our document, Meredith?
Chris, are you gonna present the updated plan? I can't remember. I had some communication with Ryan earlier today. The plan looked good. Then Mr. Barry, I had a couple comments about kind of extending the no-mow zone. And then he wrote back a dispute on that comment, and I don't know where we ended up, but you want to show the commission the most up-to-date plan?
Sure can. So just for the record, my name is Christopher Carney from our Levesque Associates here tonight on behalf of William Berry for the enforcement order at 394 Northwest Road. As requested, I'll share a screen. Here we're looking at the plan that Ryan Nelson from our Levesque Associates worked with Meredith on. Shows the mean annual high water bank line here, as well as a no touch line shown in red, and then a limited clearing area in blue. I'll zoom in so you can see a little better. Meredith, does this look like what you and Ryan came up with as a solution to this?
Yeah, I had done a site visit late June, and this whole area was revegetating nicely. It really looked like there was not any disturbance. So my suggestion, I just saw this plan today and I wrote back to Ryan. I said, you know, between flags, I don't know, mean annual high water 25 and 26, there's a very steep slope and that area is covered in ferns. I suggested we continue the no-mow zone following the 277, thank you, 277 contour. That may have been a little overreaching. Mr. Berry wrote back and said he didn't want to do that. But I will stick with leaving, and that's fine because there's a low sort of a basin behind his garage that he wants to maintain. But I was thinking that the area between flag 25 and 26, where it's a very steep slope, should be left. It's just ferns. I mean, mowing it is going to destabilize the bank and the steep slope. So that was my only comment. Yeah.
To me, just not being out on the site, it does look like our contours show the steep slope would be in the no-mow zone. And then the blue, the slopes are less severe and in the 1 to 2 year mowing cycle.
So but that's just, is that 10 feet of contours? What is that?
These are 1 foot contour lines.
1, 2, 3. So it's kind of only showing 1 foot. I mean, 5 feet, not 10. Am I reading that wrong?
Maybe, I don't think.
Meredith, the red zone is 5 feet and the blue zone is 5 feet.
Right, but it's not really matching up with the contours.
But it shows a very steep slope, a 1-to-1 slope in that area where over this 5 feet of no mow, you have approximately 5 feet of elevation change.
Okay. So do you think the area that I was referring to with the ferns is included in that? I mean, I can show you guys a photo of the area. I guess Chris isn't going to know because he hasn't been to the site. Do you guys want to see photos? Do you want to just, I'm not sure what to do. Approve this plan as is.
Or how about seeing the photos?
Okay. We just, where am I? Share screen. Okay, it's hard to see the slope, but let me just run through these. So this was in late June.
Those are the original photos, aren't they, Meredith?
No, these are, I can show you the original.
That's okay. I just wanted to understand what I'm looking at.
These are, so when we were first out there, the area was clear cut. There was but some soil disturbance.
Mhm.
And now it appears quite a bit of vegetation has come back. So the area I was referring to, so this is the garage, and it dips down, and the river is, to the right on the photo. Let's see if I have a better, no, wrong way. Hold on. Okay, this is what I was trying to explain. Like, it's very steep here. See this blue flag? It's small. Oh, I can zoom in. But what I was trying to explain was, or I was trying to preserve this fern area because it's so steep going down to the bank. And Chris, I don't know from the plan, is that, I guess that is about maybe 10 feet.
Yeah, it'd be hard to scale off this plan. All I could say is that based on the field survey we did, the very steep slopes would be within the 5 feet of the bank. And that would be a no-touch zone. And then the periodic mowing, one to two times a year, would be the other 5 feet. From my view of this, it looks like the ferns would fall, some of the ferns would fall into that 1 to 2 time mowing. But the majority of them would be on that steep slope, I believe, which is in the no-mow zone.
Okay, if that's the case, I think the plan is good as it is, and we can just, unless you want to see more photos, can approve the plan, the revised plan that Levesque provided.
It's a really tricky one, but I think that you and Levesque and Mr. Barry did as well as you could. At least we have the 5 feet of protection. So I'm good with this.
I'll then make a motion that we approve the restoration plan.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Carl, please go to the next page and pick your choice from those two choices. I think it's the second one.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, that's what the restoration plan shows.
Yeah.
So
About the 5 foot.
So if we approve the restoration plan, we are approving that last bullet, but it wouldn't hurt to read it in, Carl.
Right.
The 5 foot no disturb area will be
Yeah,
implemented.
sure. All right. Yeah, thanks. So I'll make the motion that we approve the restoration plan with the 5 foot no touch zone and then a 5 foot area just beyond that no touch zone, which is to be mowed twice a year in the dormant season.
Yeah, you have a second.
Everybody's happy.
Yeah, I'll second that.
For any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks for sticking with us, Chris. Good
Thank
night.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay,
Oh, no.
item
okay.
C, okay, 59 Pequot Point Road. Meredith, you did a site visit?
Yeah, this is an old one. We got a call from the homeowner. I guess their appraiser somehow found an old enforcement from 2015 on this property that wasn't officially closed out. I don't know how you officially close out these enforcements because it's not like they're recorded on the deed, but I did take a look. I took some photos. It looks like the Mr. Victor Rosario did comply with the enforcement as it was written back in 2015. He said he worked with Karen closely and he did everything he was supposed to. It's a managed site on the pond and it's all stable and he has a lot of native plantings and he's taking care of the property. So I think
All right, thank you.
close it out.
Motion to close the enforcement order
Seconded.
and have Meredith write a letter informing the applicant.
I'll second your edit.
Okay, well, so you're making the motion, Jim.
I am.
Okay,
motion.
have a second.
I can second that.
Okay, Carl, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Cliff,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Tim,
Yep.
and I'll vote yes as well. Item D, 88 Fur Town Road. Is this your next one, Chris?
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Okay.
yeah, Chris Carney from R. Levesque Associates here tonight on behalf of Roy and Estelle Streeter for the enforcement order at 88 Fur Town Road. I'll pull up a plan of this. So this shows the area of the alleged violation. There was, I guess, apparently some regrading and reseeding of a lawn area back here, as well as clearing of trees within the buffer. This aerial photo shows the wood line right here. And now we're seeing a new wood line right here. So definitely there was some tree clearing. Tree clearing was outside of the 50. It's hard to see. I think I'll zoom out and you can actually see it a little better, but the clearing appears to be in this area right here. But outside of the 50, between the 50 and 100-foot buffer, there was tree clearing. As far as the regrading goes and reseeding, Ryan Nelson had done some hand borings in this area, and he found no disturbed soils. He's also not only a wetland scientist, but a soil evaluator in the state of Massachusetts, and he saw no disturbed soils or major regrading. So in some ways, it was a cleaning of the.
Chris, there's resource areas on both sides of the house. Is that what I'm seeing?
It's correct. Yes. This
And
being.
can you just show me the 50 and 100 feet for both of them, please?
Absolutely. So on the west side of the site, actually, I think we are south down. But here you have the wetland resource area on the east side, a 50-foot buffer here, and a 100-foot buffer here. Clearing line is here. So as far as the easterly buffer is concerned, or the easterly wetland resource area, no clearing was done within the 100-foot buffer. The other one is an isolated vegetated wetland that's on the west side of the house. And there was clearing within the buffer. The clearing appears to be between the 50 and 100-foot buffer. And then there was allegedly some regrading in the lawn area and reseeding. Nothing from Ryan's evaluation, hand borings, there was nothing major. And in some ways, from a stormwater perspective, making sure you don't have channelized flows in established lawn areas is a good practice for you to have. Channelized flows have higher water velocities and pick up more sediment that would end up in this isolated vegetated wetland. So repairing channelization and reseeding this can have some benefits to the neighboring wetland area.
Chris, there was an old well, I remember, from the site visit. Is that on this map? Would be somewhere down in the bottom right corner.
Unfortunately, no well is shown on this plan.
Because when we were there, that was a very wet area. A lot of standing water. But if you guys looked at this, I'm sure you would have picked that up.
Yes.
This is a new delineation, correct?
Correct.
Well, the well is inside that flagged area on the right.
Okay, existing stone well. I was thinking more of a modern well, but yeah, this is a.
Oh, okay. Thank you, David. You're right. Yeah.
It's right there, yeah.
I thought it was closer to the road, but thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Meredith, when we first went out there, we thought they'd encroached quite a bit into the wetland on the left-hand side, but it appears that was rather minor from what we see here. Is that your understanding too?
David, that's certainly my understanding. I was with you as well as Meredith. And yes, we thought that's where where they had overdone it. So maybe if I'm understanding you, I'm less concerned about this than I was during the site visit.
Meredith, we can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Meredith.
Oh, okay, sorry. I said there was a break in slope on the west side, and it appears that that wasn't a wetland directly below the break in slope, which is fine. I haven't been out there to check the delineation, but I'm sure Ryan looked at the soils. It doesn't look like much has changed. I guess I just recommend that I just don't want further encroachment on the little isolated wetland. I don't know if it's, that area was lawn. I don't know what the purpose of regrading why an existing lawn was regraded. It doesn't really make sense to me, just to put down new lawn. So obviously it wasn't just lawn.
From Ryan's analysis from the hand borings, he didn't see any regrading that was done.
But there was no vegetation, so there was obviously.
Yeah, I saw regrading.
There was no vegetation, so there was some sort of regrading. Maybe the slope, the topography didn't change that much, but it went from likely vegetated to zero vegetation. And I just was wondering if that area has been revegetated. I know lawn seed was put down. I haven't talked to the homeowner. I think she just logged on. I don't know if we just need to do another site visit, or we can just say that they really weren't impacting wetlands and we can close this out. They got the delineation.
Well, I would suggest, since we have the delineation now, let's do one more visit just to confirm.
Okay.
And then go from there.
Would we want to think in terms of having some kind of marker so that the homeowners know that they're within 50 feet of this isolated wetland? We can determine that when we go back out.
Right.
All right, so I'll give you a motion to continue when you're ready, Mr. Chairman.
One more thing, Chris, has your company put any stakes or anything at the 100 and at the 100 for both of these?
No,
I think
we haven't.
the one on the left, if we walk out there, it's going to be hard to say where the 100 is.
Okay.
And perhaps just a single stake for that side, and then around the isolated one, a stake for the 50 and a stake for the 100.
In this clearing area?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, to the left of the house, there's a solid line that sort of juts to the right, and then is that the edge of the grass area now?
Here?
That line.
Yes, this is the new tree line.
That's the new tree line. Okay.
Seems to mirror the old tree line with the
Okay.
extent of the clearing being in this area.
So there was clearing, but it seems to be outside of the 100 for both of the wetlands. And
With the exception of this area here.
yes. Okay. Thank you. So if you could just mark those for us so we have an idea when we go out there.
50 and 100 from the isolated wetland and 100 from the BBW left
Yeah.
side of the land. Great,
Yeah.
excellent. We will do that for you.
Oh, thank you. And then Meredith can, coordinate when we can go out there. Okay, anything else from the commission on this one? Okay, seeing none, entertain a motion to continue.
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Jim?
Yep.
Carl?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Cliff?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, it's approaching 10 o'clock. We got to keep going here. Item E, excuse me.
Thank
Okay,
you.
we're under, thank you, yes, under 6, discussion, Russellville Road. Ratifying emergency certification. Do you have a motion to ratify the emergency certification?
So moved.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Meredith, anything to add other than what's in our notes?
No, I mean, it's an emergency because the culvert is completely rusted out and it's causing unsafe road conditions. They're going to be repaving the road, so they want to get the culvert replaced. It's being replaced in kind. I recommended they do it in dry conditions, and when I visited the site, it was a completely dry stream bed. But with all the rain, it's not dry anymore. So they're going to have to use best management practices and isolate the work area so that there's not flowing water.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Carl,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Tom,
I'll vote yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
thank you. All right, item B, 163 Union Street. I need a motion to continue until July 27th.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Jim,
Yep.
Tom,
I don't, or if you're asking for my vote, I'll vote yes.
thank you. Carl,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
thank you. Okay, item 7, under items, approval of the minutes of June 22nd, 2021.
They were lovely. I'll motion we approve them.
Do you have a
I'll-
second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additions or corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? Tom,
I'll vote yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
thank you. All right. Item 8, commission discussion, regulations and procedures, anything? Meredith.
I don't have anything.
All right, item B, wetland ordinance update. These are some suggestions that Meredith has mentioned. She and I are going to get together and incorporate those into the document. And then hopefully we'll get it before the rest of you by the next meeting. And then if everybody approves of it, we can send it off to the city attorney for their approval.
Thank you.
What is the very last one? What do you mean by that, Meredith? If it's in the buffer zone, a 1-for-1 replacement?
Yeah, I was thinking, if we're going to allow work in the buffer zone, cutting of trees, shrubs, maybe we ask people to replace trees and shrubs if appropriate for the project. If it's written in our bylaw, then the consultants can quickly look at the bylaw and say, okay, you're going to cut 10 mature trees. We're going to have to plant 10 mature trees somewhere else. And it's very cut and dry. Just a suggestion. I've seen some other towns do it. And I don't know, it would make me sleep better at night knowing we're kind of carte blanche asking everybody to replace what they cut.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess this gives me a chance to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for championing this, for doing the majority of the drudge work on this ordinance update.
We'll get through it. We'll get through it.
I'd like to throw in Carl also, because I
Oh,
know
yes.
he initiated a number of discussion items. So thank you to everybody.
Okay,
Thanks, Carl.
all right, item 9.
Whoa, I'll make a motion we adjourn.
You didn't think we'd get there so fast, did you?
I didn't. Yeah, what a quick meeting.
We have a second.
Yeah.
I will second.
Okay, all in favor? Tom,
I'll vote yes.
Jim,
Yes.
Cliff,
Yes.
Carl,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Everybody.
Yes,
Yeah, good night, folks.
thanks.